Good morning. We'll call to order the December 1st, 2009 meeting of the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County. Thank you, Commissioner. This time, the invocation will be Father Tri Tang Pham from St. Helen's Church. Is he here? There he is. Great. Welcome. And then the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Flesher. Everybody please rise. Welcome, Father.
In you, Lord our God, all things have their beginning, continuation, and end. Grace us with your saving presence. Aid us with your constant help. And let us glorify you now and forever. Give us an effective love for our brothers and sisters who are suffering from lack of food and jobless. Help our government leaders, especially here in our county, to do all they can to relieve the people's hunger, anxiety, and weariness, that they may serve you with a carefree heart. We also remember our men and women serving in public, defending for the weak, especially those in overseas, our servicemen and women. Protect them from all harm and bring them home safely. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father. Please join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our great nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we move on to the agenda, I just want to recognize that Commissioner Slaughter is not here today. He is attending to a family medical issue, and so just so that people know that he is not be able to make it today. Additions, deletions to the agenda. We have a request from the county administrator to move item 8W, which is a public notice hearing date, to 10C. Are there any other additions or deletions to the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, passes unanimously. Thank you. Brings us to number 5A, proclamations and presentations. Proclamation honoring Vernita Shepard on her retirement from Indian River County Board of County Commissioners, Department of Human Services, for 31 years of service. And Vernita, would you like to come down to the podium, please? Is she here?
Yes.
Okay.
Right here, please. Know the employees.
And if there's any of your family you want to come up with you, bring them on up.
31 years.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Hey, baby. Good.
This is a proclamation honoring Vernita Shepard on her retirement from Indian River County Board of County Commissioners, Department of Human Services. Whereas Vernita Shepard has announced retirement from Human Services effective September 30, 2009, and whereas Vernita Shepard began her employment with Indian River County on June 22, 1978, as an office clerk in the administrator's office. On May 24, 1979, she was reclassified to clerk typist and transferred to the Utilities Department, where she held many titles during her tenure. On October 1st, 1983, she transferred to Human Services and held the position of caseworker until her retirement. And whereas Vernita Shepard has served this county and the public with selflessness, she consistently treated everyone with genuine fairness and compassion. During her years of service, she was dedicated, and her work was greatly appreciated by her employer, clients, and coworkers alike. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the Board applauds the tremendous efforts of Vernita Shepard on behalf of this county, and the Board wishes to express their appreciation to Vernita Shepard for her dedication and exemplary service to Indian River County. And be it further proclaimed that the Board wishes Vernita the very best in her future endeavors. Dated this first day of December 2009. In addition to the proclamation, there's also a plaque that to certify that Vernita Shepard is hereby presented this retirement award for outstanding performance and faithful service to the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners for 31 years of service, dated this first day of December 2009. Vernita, thank you much for your career. Vernita, please feel free to say something or introduce your family, or you have the floor.
Yes. This is Reverend and Mrs. Young. He's the reason that I'm employed with the county, that I was employed with the county. We started with UDU, and we were, the county took over the water department where I worked, and I worked under the supervision of Reverend Leon Young, and from there it all, proceeded on. So I give all of my credit to Reverend Young, and I want to thank the county very much for the time served, and I really appreciate it. But here is my wonderful son, Liddell. If you can see, he is Lieutenant Sergeant.
Not captain yet.
I'm trying to help put him up.
The sheriff is here. Maybe we can do a field promotion.
And this is my son, Andre. And once again, I want to thank you very much. I really
Well, thank you for your service.
Thank you, Vernita.
Here, Vernita.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Doctor. Thank you, sir.
Tell Liddell I said hi.
Item 5B is a presentation by Indian River County Chamber of Commerce regarding a resolution affirming the Chamber's support of beach renourishment. And Penny Chandler, welcome.
Good morning. I'm Penny Chandler. I'm the president of the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber has for many, many years supported the county's beach preservation plan, and at a recent meeting, at the last Board of Directors meeting, they determined that they would like to have a resolution drawn up and presented to you, and I'll read it to you. Whereas the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce believes the beaches are an asset to Indian River County, and whereas the beaches are considered a destination for our full-time and seasonal Indian River County residents and thousands of tourists each year, and whereas visitors and seasonal visitors spend millions of dollars in Indian River County every year, creating new businesses and jobs in our county, and whereas the beaches contribute to the success of our visitor industry, which generated $1,282,948 in bed tax revenues during the last 12 months, and whereas bed tax revenues of 7 cents on the dollar has paid for the purchase of Dodgertown property, and whereas the Barrier Island commercial and residential property owners are the largest source of county tax dollars, and whereas only 11% of the county's population are on the Barrier Island, 44% of all ad valorem taxes in Indian River County are collected from Barrier Island properties to maintain the area's infrastructure. And whereas the Barrier Island has approximately 4% of the county's entire infrastructure, and 82% of that 4% are the beaches. And whereas Barrier Island residents and visitors bring more than $57 million a year to the county economy, and whereas Indian River County is dependent on the Barrier Island community for the resources named above to help provide the quality of public services enjoyed by all county residents. And whereas the barrier island provides nesting grounds for threatened and endangered sea turtles, and eroded beaches negatively impact the turtles' nesting habitat, now therefore be it resolved, and the date was the 16th of November when the board last met, that the Board of Directors of the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce reaffirms our long-standing support of the county's beach preservation plan for the restoration of critically eroded barrier island beaches in Indian River County to protect this landmass and the taxes it generates that help pay for public services provided to all county residents and businesses. Thank you.
Penny, we thank you very much, and please express our gratitude to your board. Later today, we'll get an update from Public Works on the Sector 3 project,
Right.
but it seems to be going along fairly well right now. Keep our fingers crossed, but we do appreciate the support, and please let your board know
Thank
we
you. Sure
appreciate
thing. Thank you.
it. Okay, which brings us to item C, no minutes to approve. Item 7 is informational items from staff not requiring board action. Is there any comments on that? Hearing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. Does anybody wish to pull anything from consent?
Move approval.
Second.
Before we do that, Commissioner, I would like to pull item T.
Move to approve as amended.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Davis and a second from Commissioner Wheeler. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Item T is the State Road 60 and 58th Avenue improvements. And I just kind of wanted to touch base with staff on this. We're at 60% design, which means according to our resolution, we need to start completing the right-of-way purchases for this. And before we move forward on anything with that intersection, I'd like to have staff come back and give us a detailed financial impact of how much all that right-of-way is going to cost, the actual construction, the cost to move all the utility lines, to see if it really is financially feasible to even do that intersection before we start moving forward, spending more money on it. Chris, do you want to?
Sure. Chris Morrow, Public Works Director. The project has been proceeding along because, as the Chairman mentioned, the plans preparation have reached 60%. We've begun the right-of-way acquisition. We're not very far along. In fact, we've only acquired 5 out of the necessary 21 parcels. Most of them are commercial. In the most recent 5-year CIP, that project has been pushed back to years 4 and 5 because of the cost and the time necessary to acquire all the right-of-way. This item here is to do a small project next year that will relieve congestion at the intersection without having to do the right-of-way acquisition and without having to move the 2 sets of overhead electric lines that runs along 58th Avenue. What this would entail would be a small-scale design that would lengthen the dual left turn lanes northbound on the south leg of the intersection in the northbound direction. The 2 dual left turn lanes would be lengthened to the south because right now there's not enough storage in those lanes, and because of the lack of storage we have to do some creative signal phasing there. We actually run what we call a lead-lag operation where one direction goes, the northbound leads, and then the southbound lags. And the reason we do that is so that all of those left turners, the northbound to westbound left turners, can flush through the intersection and move through. If we didn't do that, they would get blocked off because the left turn lanes are so short. So this project, this short-range project that we have in front of you today, would be to lengthen those left turn lanes. It would cut off the median opening to the south. They're lining up with Sam's, but it would create a new median opening further south whereby people could U-turn and come back if they wanted to head into the Sam's or Walmart area. It's a short-range project. It's just a stopgap thing that we could do now without acquiring any more right-of-way and without doing utility relocation.
Okay, and then, so Chris, leaving Sam's from the west end, they'll no longer be able to make that left-hand turn to head southbound on 58.
That's correct. That's been a difficult maneuver anyway for most
venture
people.
getting out of there. Yeah.
Right. It's been a high accident location, so we'd like to eliminate that opening. And it was going to be eliminated with the bigger project. This would just do it sooner and provide some relief. And then if we were to lengthen the left turns, what we can do is use standard signal phasing at the intersection, have the lefts come up together instead of staggered like they are today.
Okay. Commissioner Davis?
Yes. Chris, any idea how much more capacity that's going to be able to add at that intersection whenever we get completed with the project?
We think because we can rephase the traffic signal and retime it, we think we're going to add about a 5 to 7% increase in capacity. It's not going to be much, but it's going to allow those left turners to clear out, whereas today they kind of get backed up, and it takes. We have cycle failures is what they do. They can't make it through the signal in one cycle. That should help that situation.
Okay. One other question, Commissioner.
Oh, absolutely.
In looking at this, clearly the reason why we don't have, or why this is so bad, is not just because of the facilities that are around this, but also because the closest intersection heading back to the west is 66th Avenue. How long or how far out is it from anybody being able to go across the relief canal at 66th Avenue?
Well, the design of 66th Avenue south of 16th Street, which would take it over the main relief canal, which cuts across at an angle there, that's just about completed. We had intended, there's only one piece of right-of-way left to acquire. That's from Laurel Homes, which is right at that location. Once we acquire that, and we're heading towards eminent domain acquisition on that parcel, once we acquire that, we should be able to begin construction next year, which would extend 66th Avenue south of 16th Street all the way down to 4th Street, where it already is paved, and then it would be cleared all the way to Oslo.
Commissioner, and I'm not a traffic engineer, but I almost see that project as being the single biggest investment we can make as a county to try to alleviate the congestion at 58th Avenue and State Road 60. I know I would go that way. I would do anything to avoid that intersection if at all possible, but there's no way I can do that and still go west.
Right. Well, we also have the College Lane extension, which is just about to open up. That will connect 58th and 66th along the College Lane corridor, which then, as you head west, lines up with 16th Street, which is under construction now. So that is also a way around the 60th and 58th intersection if people want to take that route.
How is College Lane going to line up with 16th Street?
It curves, as you go west from 58th Avenue, it curves around there by the Indian River State College, and then it's going to be opened up all the way to 16th Street or 66th Avenue there, where we just finished that bridge there over the Lateral Lake Canal.
No, I follow that, but I thought you said, maybe I misinterpreted what you said, that College Lane would line up with 16th Street.
Right. As you continue west on College Lane and it curves south, it lines up with 16th
I'm thinking
Street
of east of there.
at 66th Avenue.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Wheeler? Or
I'm done.
Chris, when you start construction on this, first I would, how long do you anticipate the construction taking?
This is a very small job. It would probably be only about a 6-month project.
I would hope that that tries to be coordinated with summer traffic rather than winter traffic when we put that out for bid.
Right. That's what we plan to do.
Okay.
And Commissioner, I think we're thinking along the same way. I think instead of spending a ton of money buying right-of-way at that intersection, we're better off putting that into Oslo, 66, College Lane, the bridge, and providing alternate routes around that intersection instead of spending all the dollars we got just to buy right-of-way and not have any money left to actually do the project. So,
one of the problems we have, though, actually the board approved a resolution which makes us design and start buying right-of-way at 60%. And if we don't do away with that resolution, we're not going to get projects done. We need to, I think, do away with that resolution because all our money is going into right-of-way, and we won't have money for our projects. If we continue, we need to start phasing projects where we've got more of the right-of-way. The resolution that was passed that says once we go 60%, we're going to aggressively start eminent domain and all the pieces. We no longer can afford to do all the segments that we've got in our plan. So I think that we're going to have to look at rescinding that resolution.
Good.
Go ahead, Commissioner Davis.
I appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Baird, but At the same time, now you're putting back families in an awkward situation of not having any resolution once we get to any point of design, and you give that continuous give and take, or not even give and take. It's that continuous notion of not knowing whether you should, paint your front door, you're going to lose your whole house scenario. And so I think the resolution is well intended, and I think the resolution should stay in place. Now, perhaps what we need to look at is how far along are we going to be before we start toying with people's property as far as taking it for road right-of-way expansion, not amend the resolution.
Commissioner Wheeler?
Yeah, I'm thinking it might be a good idea to bring that back and get a full presentation from staff on this, and due to the shortcoming in revenue, etc., and take a look at it in depth at a meeting, put everything on the table in front of us at one time, and let us reevaluate where we're at.
Okay. And would you want to bring that back on your matters, Commissioner, just to get the ball started?
That'd be fine.
Okay.
If you need a motion to have staff set that up and bring it back where they want. I just like to. There's nothing wrong going back and looking at something again to make sure we're doing the right thing or continuing on the right path or not. I think we need to be flexible, and the economy certainly has changed since all of this had started.
Okay. Would you like to go ahead and make that a motion, then have staff bring that back just for reconsideration?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Motion from Commissioner Wheeler.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Davis will second that, just to have staff bring back, and Joe, I forget which resolution number it is, but it's the right-of-way resolution.
Resolution 139 was that.
Okay,
That's
Resolution 139.
Mr. Chair, if I could, was it just the resolution, or was it, and again, I'm leaning more of leaving the resolution where it is and perhaps looking at how the county goes about with a right-of-way acquisition.
I'm thinking.
I can tell you right now, we'll bring back showing what money we have, projecting our costs for all our projects. I can tell you a lot of at the 60% right now, we'll never get those projects done for 15 years. So what we've done is taken property and not get the project done. We need to have more flexibility, and we'll bring it back and do a whole cash flow analysis of the projects where we sit, and then the commission can make their decision.
Yeah, and that was my intent.
Okay,
I think we need to look at the whole package on the table in front of us and evaluate at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Fletcher, do you have anything to? No. You good? Okay. We'll go ahead and proceed to vote unless there's any comment from the public on this. Seeing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously.
I move to approve item T.
I'll second that. And this is to move forward with the kind of the interim measure at State Road 60 and 58th Avenue. Yes. Any discussion? Seeing none, proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Brings us to item 9A, Constitutional Officers, Darrell Lohr, Indian River County Sheriff.
Move approval.
Second.
Wow, good morning. It is a great morning, isn't
Sheriff,
it?
is there anything you'd like to say?
I got a couple other things I'd like to put on the agenda. Mr. Chairman, thank you, and good morning, Commissioners. Again, it is my pleasure to bring before you some good news, which obviously is the dollars, and this is relevant to our State Criminal Alien Assistance Program, which is the monitoring and the managing of criminal aliens, undocumented criminal aliens, and this percentage of dollars, I will have you know, has been negotiated down from a 22% service fee to an 18% service fee. So we're very happy with that, and we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff.
And, Sheriff, it's great to see you bringing these grants in. We know it helps out on the budget, so we appreciate all the hard work you and your staff do to bring these grants in.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on this? We have a motion from Commissioner Wheeler, seconded by Commissioner Fletcher to approve recommendation here. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you. 9B, this is Kay Clem, Indian River County Supervisor of Elections. New voting equipment for voters with disabilities. Good morning, Kay.
Good morning. Can't believe I'm back again about voting equipment. And I know you're as excited as I am about it. I know you all remember the 2000 election and all that fell out from after that, all the fallout after that. And we were required to buy touchscreen voting equipment or an optical scan-based system at that time. The touchscreen was far cheaper to operate. It took less poll workers, and it was the only system out there that met the Americans with Disability Act requirements for voters with disabilities to be able to vote unassisted. So we chose, as a council and myself, to go with the touchscreen equipment. Quickly followed someone getting a Diebold voting equipment on the internet that was no longer in service, hadn't been used, wasn't on the market, ripped it apart, and then came many groups to say that touchscreens were not effective. Then, as soon as Governor Crist took office, within the first month, he said he wanted our state to become a paper ballot state. This time differently. The first time, we paid $2 million for the equipment, and we were reimbursed by the state $350,000 in 2 different payments over 2 years. The rest of it, Indian River County taxpayers ate. And this time, when we went to the paper balloting system, the state bought most of the equipment, the actual machines themselves. We had to buy extra for training and for backups and that sort of thing. But the county did have to spend around $300,000 just to help us implement the system, because it took up so much room, and we had to have carts to take it back and forth to the precincts, and the many other things that had to be done, not the least of which was printing paper, very expensive paper ballots. When the legislature made all their changes in 2002 and 2004, they said that they wanted us to bring the paper ballot system up to there's no way anyone can vote a paper ballot without assistance right now. There's one vendor out there that has a piece of equipment that will pretty much works like our audio ballot does, that the voter puts the headphones on and they use a keypad to indicate their vote. It's pretty much the same thing, except it's telling another piece of equipment to darken in the oval or attach the 2 ends of the arrows. Well, the only time that I ever saw it demonstrated, it didn't even hit the strike zone, so it would not have counted. I know many of you have served on the canvassing board. You know what I'm talking about, that area between the 2 arrows that you connect. That's where the optical scanner goes to look for a vote, and if there's nothing there in the place that it's supposed to be, it will not count the vote. And so that's the only thing that's on the market right now. They had hoped that we by 2012 would be able to put something, the vendors would magically come up with a system that would do a good job on that, and we could purchase it by 2012. The federal government in the Help Americans Vote Act says that they don't require that the counties and the states do that until 2016. Last year, I brought this issue to you because we were trying to get the legislature to say, give us 2016 too, because the equipment is just not ready. It hasn't been invented and it hasn't been tested. And I don't think anyone in Florida wants to be a guinea pig again. Now, many counties in the state are using AutoMark 4. And since we've had to make a change, they went ahead and made the change. We're also, and we'll stop right there, the resolution that I'm asking you to adopt today is one that's been adopted by 40 counties in the state to ask the legislature to extend that date to 2016. Now I want to tell you why it's important for Indian River County. There are, basically we had 5 public hearings. All of the county commissioners and all the public were invited when we went with our touchscreen system. And I had one here that was called Election Systems and Software. Much of the state went with that system. We even took the top 2 systems, which was ES&S and our Sequoia, out to the mall and had the people try them out, and they liked Sequoia better. We went with Sequoia. Now ES&S has kind of Pac-Man gobbled up all these other little companies, and now they just bought Premier, which was the old Diebold, the one that got sold on the internet and started the whole mess. They changed their name to protect the innocent and started marketing under Premier. Premier has been sold to ES&S. ES&S now owns or operates equipment in 65 of the 67 counties in Florida. Where does that leave us? We knew when we bought our equipment this last time, when the state bought our optical scanners, that they were working on a new prototype for new optical scan equipment, new modems that work, and many other features that will make those safer and easier to use. They gave us a guarantee that they would give us money back on the equipment that we bought. Whenever they presented it to us, we could buy it and get X amount off. If it was the next year, X amount off. If the next year, X amount off. Sequoia has had some difficult financial issues, as have all of the companies. I guess they thought they were going to sell new voting systems every year, and just about they are. In the past, if you bought one voting system every 25 years, you were ahead of the game, but it's not that way anymore. What they're doing now at Sequoia is creating a system that has different software for each one of its components. So you'd have a software for the tabulation system, a different software for absentees, a different software for the optical scanners, a different software for the audio ballot. So that soon our equipment won't be serviced anymore, and we'll have to roll over into this new equipment, which make an additional charge for us if we chose to go with Sequoia. I'm not really fond of staying in a group of 2 amongst 65. I don't think anybody in their right mind would. However, that's tied up right now because they have 2 antitrust suits against them. Department of Justice and the Senate Committee on Elections is investigating them right now. So it's all kind of up in the air, which to me gives more fodder to us trying to extend this deadline because it's going to cost us more, number one, in Indian River County, and just to switch to these new AutoMark devices is probably going to be about $500,000. And then 2 years down the line, we may be somewhere else. So it's really imperative that we get this passed. We have 40 county support. We have the Florida Association of Counties support in trying to get this passed, and many of those 40 counties have made it a top priority issue on their legislative package and have their lobbyists working on it. So I'd ask that you do that right away, and we'll be continuing to follow what's going on at the other level and when we have to come and make that choice. I think I told you once before, the thing that really makes this sad is that, we have to provide the equipment for voters with disabilities to be able to vote unassisted. But in Indian River County, our voters don't ask to vote unassisted. Since 2002, we've had 8 people use the ADA equipment.
So, Kay, what you're saying is the voting machines are a mess, and you're asking us for a resolution to push back the date from 2012 to 2016. Is that correct? Okay.
I'll move the resolution.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Wheeler.
I'll second that. I'll second that for discussion.
Commissioners, there's one item in here. You have in the middle of your agenda item that you have is that you would like to take over that area.
Yes.
Can we hold off on that because I've got other needs and we're having an evaluation down at the sheriff's? Can we hold off on that part of it? I'd like to. We've got the training room here. We will work with you.
Well, it won't work, I was told when we built the building. I need like 40 machines that are the size of this thing in there with one person behind each one to train them on the electronic voter registration system. And I believe that we're breaking probably fire codes by using our conference room now. The reason I left the state college is because I was having to pay $6,000 or $8,000 a year. Perhaps y'all could work on that for me.
Well, we also have the new bracket library that has lots of room I'd like to evaluate all that because I have to tear all the equipment, all the furnishings and everything out. I'd like to take time to evaluate that space. If you'd work with us on that, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, but it obviously would affect how we prepare our training materials, which we're working on right now. So I hope we could come to a quick decision.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner,
appreciate it.
Wheeler, your motion was just support the resolution at this point in time. That's correct. And I think what I'd like to see, if it's okay with you, is we'll take the wording here that Ms. Clemens supplied and put it in a format that we normally have for a county resolution, then just bring it back the following week under consent or something like that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Davis.
In addition to that, Ms. Clem, are you planning on coming before our legislative delegation meeting and requesting that? And Mr. Barrett, if we could, then, just to, I guess, put more punch behind the point, if we could have that under our issues also for the legislative delegation topics, I think that would be appropriate to drive home from both ends.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fletcher, I think you're good. Okay. So we have a motion to approve the resolution and come back in the format for the county and be on consent next week from Commissioner Wheeler, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Is there any further discussion? Any comment from the public? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Kay.
Kay, just Mr. Chairman, if I could,
yes,
when is the drop dead point for you to you find some space for your training? Just to help me understand the sense of urgency.
We'll start training this summer.
So that means they need to be moved and in place and operational. Okay. We can do it by then, Joe? Okay.
Yes, we should be able to.
Thank you.
Okay. That moves us to Public items. A public hearing on an ordinance to create a new Gifford Community Center MSTU. Memorandum dated November 17th, 2009. And Jason, you're going to present this?
No, I will.
Or will? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, within Gifford Park, there's a structure that is county-owned and leased for 20 years up through 2018 to the Progressive Civic League of Gifford, Florida, Inc. Building's known as the Gifford Community Center, and it was one of the first facilities in the Gifford Park. The facility is required to be used for public purpose and open to the public on a non-discriminatory basis. About a year ago, the board initiated a process to create a municipal service benefit unit that was coterminous with the Gifford Street Lighting District. And if you look in your agendas at page 211, you'll see the general boundaries of the district: 49th Street on the north, Kings Highway on the west, about a quarter mile south of 41st Street until you get to the airport area, then back to 41st Street, and just slightly east of US 1 running up to 49th Street. When we went forward with that proposed benefit unit, a couple of difficulties arose. We were looking at the map of the area. There are a number of industrial areas. There was a question, would they really derive a benefit? If we tried to carve out just the residential areas that more likely would benefit from the community center, the cost of reprogramming the property appraiser's computers was estimated to be over $100,000, which is more than the benefit unit would generate. Also, at the same time, we were looking at Florida cases which had ruled that community centers were not proper uses for benefit units, in that a benefit must go to the property that it's being assessed rather than the residents of the property. So, for example, with streetlights, you can see a direct benefit to the property. The safety's there, but it was more difficult for the Florida courts to construe any benefit to property from community centers within a general area. So late this summer, after that foray had been unsuccessful, we met again with the Progressive Civic League, and the determination was made to request that the board authorize creation by ordinance of a municipal service taxing unit to generate funds to support the community center upkeep and operations. A taxing unit imposes millage for taxes, and there's no requirement to have a direct benefit to the property subject to taxation. And this would also allow the boundaries of the Gifford Community Center to be taxing unit to be coterminous with the street lighting district and not require substantial reprogramming of the property appraiser's computers. The MSTU has to be put in place before the end of this year to go on tax rolls for collection next year. And there has been some funding analysis that I can turn over to Jason, but before I do, I'd like to point out that even though this was advertised for public hearing today, at our November 16th meeting, there was seemed to be a consensus of the board that they wanted the word to get out to the community. We tried to do that through an extensive CC distribution list to affected parties, but I think it was Commissioner Solari's wish that we open the public hearing today but continue it to the 15th to allow as much community awareness of it as possible. But that would be at your discretion. And
that was going to be my intent, that I would go ahead and open it today. If there's anybody here in the audience that would want to comment on it, we'll take that testimony today, but we will table this to a period certain of December 15th. But Jason, did you want to go over the financials?
Yes, I can briefly, Commissioner O'Brien. For the record, Jason Brown, County Budget Director. Staff performed an analysis of this proposed MSTU and what the estimated millage rate would be to support this. We're working with a budget of about $65,000 to provide for the Gifford Community Center. About $35,000 of that would go towards operations, and the remaining 30% would be for some capital and renewal and replacement. needs that they have there. There are several items like new roof, new HVAC system that have not been replaced since that facility was built. The Progressive Civic League provided us a list of about $180,000 in total improvements that they wanted to accomplish over a 5-year period, about a 5 or 6 year period. So we broke that down to about $30,000 a year in funding towards those. So when you add those all up, you get to about $65,000. Once you add in the collection costs that we have to pay for the property appraiser and tax collector, you're looking at a little over $70,000. Currently, the total tax roll in that district is about $141 million. For the purposes of this analysis, staff projected a 10% decrease in the tax roll because this will be the first year, if this is implemented, would be the 2010 tax roll. Of course, we do not know what that is right now, so staff's estimating a 10% decrease for a total taxable value of about $127 million. If you look at the estimated millage rate that would be needed to support that, it would be about 0.63 mils if the tax was levied on all property within the district. So if you're looking at a $100,000 taxable value, you'd be looking at about a $63 charge. There was also some concern brought up about whether this should be levied on residential only or residential and commercial. So staff prepared an analysis of levying this millage on residential only. If you look of that $141 million, about $85 million is residential property. So if the millage was levied only on the $85 million, you're up to a little bit over 1 mil, 1.04 mils. The property appraiser has raised some concern over their ability to do this. They have some difficulties in establishing the difference between residential and commercial, and part of the reason for that is in their system and based on the statutes, multifamily residential over, I think, 8 or 9 units is considered commercial, and so they're talking about a $100,000 charge to make this change in their software, and I think they're here and they can discuss that if you want to talk about that a little more. But that's one challenge, is separating the residential and the commercial. And also, just as a note, currently we're funding about $15,000 a year from the general fund for the operation of the community center. However, this was brought about as a means to fund the full need there, because that obviously the deferred maintenance, because of the limitations on funding, the roof needing replacing, the HVAC system needing replacing, have kind of come to a head here. And I will answer any questions if you have them.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Fletcher?
Jason, when we began the original discussion on the MSTU, MSBU debate, we had referred back to many of the existing MSTUs, and I think the range was about $18 to $25, and I think I discussed that with the group as well. We were looking at that as a financial impact with the citizens in the community if it was approved. We were looking at in and about that ballpark. What has changed since then? What parameters, as far as the scope and demand, have raised these numbers significantly? I've tremendous concern that when we were talking about the residential, we were looking at perhaps maybe $15 to $25, and the commercial was not taken into play. It sure looks like the commercial property is now absorbing the lion's share, and I'm looking at these numbers. If you can explain how we got to $1,905 on a commercial property in the Gifford community, I'd like to hear that.
Okay. I have a worksheet that I want to put on up on the Elmo, if I could, real quick.
And I appreciate you preparing that.
We just prepared this sheet yesterday because of the concerns. We had a lot of people who have commercial property call us, and so we did this analysis, and we weren't aware when we started down this road that it would affect the commercial so drastically as it did. And as we tend to, when we look at this, I think the goal here was to fund the community center. When you look at adding the property appraiser, tax collectors costs, which now that we're evaluating, it's maybe creating this district might be inefficient. I think what the Gifford community is looking at is they need to be funded about $35,000 out of operating a year, and they need about $30,000 in capital. And maybe rather than creating another tax district, which is very costly and very inefficient, we might want to make an obligation to fund them out of the general fund and the infrastructure tax for the difference, $35,000. Because what happens here, for $70,000, we're spending another $40,000 a year for collections and $100,000 to set up the computer, and it seems very inefficient. And I think the Gifford community was just looking to get funded, find a way to fund their center. And maybe we need to look at, we could make a commitment to them, maybe include it in their lease for funding, and take the money out of infrastructure, and everyone's happy, and it's not such a hardship. That's an alternative we've come up with just because of, after we evaluated what it does to commercials. You see, if you get a commercial piece that's worth, has a value of $3 million, it's hard to explain to people. That's $1,905 in additional taxes, and it just seems extremely inefficient.
And that would be a continuous demand on our commercial property owners.
Yes.
That concern, again, the original discussion was $15, $25, $35. Perhaps maybe it was going to be a little bit more for commercial properties. But seeing these numbers, I don't consider this an additional burden. I consider this nearly unconscionable at $2,000 to raise the value. I would most certainly want to see the center be funded, and again, on first blush, $15, $25, I believe that would be the most appropriate. And we all discussed that, but these newfound numbers are almost indigestible.
What you have happen, the overall amount is the same. What we were talking about initially was $25 per parcel acre, so most homes are going to be $25. What you have when you change it to a tax is it redistributes who pays the $70,000. So that $2 million piece of commercial property, maybe it was 4 acres, they would have paid $100 under the other scenario. Now they're paying $1,200. So it really, the amount of the skewing, how much it's skewed, I think is what's gotten us there, that we're at these $1,200 amounts, and I think that's something that wasn't foreseen and is a big concern here. So what happens is that $50,000 home that would have been paying $25, now they're paying $15. The $10 is getting put in over and over again by that $2 million commercial piece of property. It's
and that's
just a
because of the shift between the MSBU to the MSTU?
Right.
Yes.
Are we looking at probably a skewed geographic area to examine these funds properly? Should maybe we should look at a different approach, a wider approach?
I think that what happened here is,
look at the commercial property. That's just exorbitant.
What happened is we tried to do an MSBU, and legal said you cannot do commercial. What happens when you go? A lot of properties in the Gifford area don't pay any ad valorem. They're under the $25,000 homestead. They pay very little. So what happens is that when we go to an ad valorem taxing unit, it gets redistributed to the commercial because the residential's not paying. And then we have to pay a tax collector fee and a property appraiser and set up the computer. I think if we're truly committed to funding the Gifford Community Center, this is probably the most inefficient way to do it now that I look at it. However, if you wish to give them comfort, because all they want is comfort, they need to do some improvements and they need some operating money. I think the best way to do that would be to make a commitment to fund the $35,000 out of the general fund. We already fund $15,000, and then the additional $35,000 or $40,000 a year for the next 5 or 6 years. Fund that out of our infrastructure tax or optional sales tax. That facility definitely needs updating, but I think that would be a lot more efficient and everyone would be happy. The Gifford community would get their improvements, their funding, for a lot less money now that we've evaluated that. And I want to apologize to them. We did this very quickly. We've been changing constantly. We did it very quickly to get it on the tax roll for this year. And when we finally looked back and evaluated it, it had a lot of flaws. So I want to apologize to the Gifford community because we just got this information. That's why we're trying to change horses at this late date.
Commissioner Davis, and then I'll come back to Commissioner Fletcher.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, and as I look at this, I have a hard time going with the MSTU, not just because of the burden that it puts on the commercial structure, but I'll go into that. We've worked very hard in reducing taxes to be able to, across the board, not just on commercial properties, to be able to provide some economic benefit. The community center is a benefit to the Gifford community, but just as much so are jobs. And I see several commercial people out there today and they have contacted me on this. And so if we are to move forward with any special taxing entity or district, as far as I would prefer it be a MSBU. And I'm hearing legally we can't do that, and I'm good with that. But I'm just saying that I'm opposed to an MSTU based on what I'm seeing here in front of me. And the second part of that would be to I just don't see the benefits to the commercial land uses or facilities of a community center being there to be able to levy that tax. So that's where I am with this. And my other part of my question is I believe this would probably be the first community center that really the county would be looking at. I don't want to say it wouldn't be taking over, but it's our only community center, if I'm not mistaken.
It's not. We've got the Rock Ridge one that we maintain also. The old Rock Ridge facility sits in Rock Ridge, and this one is actually it was a joint grant to build the facility, and we leased it back to them.
How do we work the structure of the Rock Ridge? Well,
we don't pay any of the operating. We totally maintain the facility. It's a lot smaller. It's so that's how we handle it. Now the Gifford Progressive League has a lot more functions in it. It's a lot bigger facility, that building. It does need improvements.
If a resident of Indian River County wanted to use the Rock Ridge facility, how would they go about doing that?
They would contact the Rock Ridge. They contact the Rock Ridge Association because we give that property to them for use, and they would be open to it. It's the same as the Gifford Progressive League. If you're talking about a building that's tiny, you're talking about a building that's maybe 20 by 20, 400 square feet. So it's not even in the same. Also, they don't hold as many community events as the Gifford Progressive League. I guess what I'm saying is
Mr. Baird, I'm trying to see do something consistent countywide, something that's fair to the residents of Gifford, something that perhaps is already in place. It sounds like to me that could be what they're asking for, is something along those lines. So I don't know. I've never, actually Rock Ridge slipped my mind on that. So I'm just wondering if I wanted to or you wanted to have a wedding reception there, what's the policy for it and how do we go about doing that? Are there fees involved or is it just open, come use it if it's not available?
It's up to, we give them, they don't ask for any operating money. It is up to the Rock Ridge. And I'm also incorrect. There's also one in Roseland. Didn't we take over the Roseland?
Yes, we did.
And the same situation.
And how are we funding that one?
Well, they do the same. We don't give them any operating, but we keep the facility up. Okay. Gifford is the only one we give operating, but it has a lot more. It has a lot more events. For instance, it has Meals on Wheels. It has senior events, and it has educational events in there. So that's why the commission made the decision to fund operating. I think that if we made the commitment, because looking at these numbers, it looks extremely inefficient. I think if we made the commitment for the next 5 to 7 years to fund the Gifford Community Center operating up to 35, we presently fund 15 in the general fund, and put about $40,000 in budget $40,000 in the optional sales tax for improvements per year. I think that would be the best way to go. Everyone would be happy. Gifford community would get what they wanted, and it would be a lot more inefficient. It would be a lot more efficient. This thing is extremely inefficient. We're spending to collect very few dollars. We're spending a couple of $100,000.
Yeah.
That just looks bad for us.
Yeah. Thank
Commissioner
you.
Fletcher, did you have anything else to add?
No, I think that was covered. I appreciate Joe's input on that. Most certainly, the Gifford Community Center is a very valuable tool, and I think comparing the Gifford Community Center with other community centers is, while it's fair as a community center, I think that there's a greater utility that's burdened upon the Gifford Community Center. It needs to be funded in some aspect. I just have grave concern about these newfound numbers, and I believe that the groups that I've met with were most certainly supportive of and enticed with the idea of an $18 to $25. We actually brought out some of the other MSTUs to discuss them because it was also the concern that what would be the burden on the community. And I also wanted to add that the group that I met with appreciated the amount of partnership that the local business community has offered in many ways, and we did not take into account these large numbers that have been recently discussed. But I just want to say, in all fairness, throughout the discussion, it was, again, anticipated that this would be in that same ballpark as all the other MSTUs.
Okay. Commissioner Wheeler?
Yeah, Mr. Baird, you're talking about raising the $15,000 contribution toward operating facility to $35,000.
Yes.
And then plus $40,000 out of the 1 cent optional sales tax in addition to that? Would the $35,000 being raised from 15 be all operating, or would part of that go toward the remodeling?
It's that part, the 35 that we say is all operating, and I think, Jason, do you have the budget that you could throw on the screen for that so they get an idea of, they did a budget for operating and they did a budget for what they need in capital improvements. And right now, here's their budget. And what has happened also, we used to fund them considerably more, but we think that, for instance, some of the painting and right now, and some of the security, some of the other things that we could, the AC repair, we could take out as optional sales tax. We think because it extends the life over 5 years, it is definitely infrastructure. It's improving infrastructure. And I'm just throwing that out there. I think it would solve this problem. I don't like increasing my general fund in hard times, but if we were seriously committed to doing these improvements, the most inefficient way to do it, I think now, and I think would be to create an this MSTU. I mean, we're spending $100,000 to give a couple of $100,000 in 5-year period. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, I'm just looking at the alternative there because I don't agree with assessing the commercial industrial property for something that they really don't receive a benefit from. The community receives a benefit from it. So I've got a problem with that up front. But I want to make sure I understand, and I believe the $15,000 was probably back in the 80s when that was approved for operating, and I assume it's been $15,000 a year ever since then.
Actually, it was more. I've been cutting all the agents.
18,000 originally?
I think it got up to 22,000.
21,600, I think.
Well, the original was like 15 or 18, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, and then it went up to a high of about, I think, 21,600.
Okay.
And about 2,000.
Okay. The other question I have is can you actually use $40,000 of the optional sales tax to repair a building? Is that come under the capital expense that's non-renewable? I know you can buy cars and fire trucks now, but could you actually use the sales tax for that?
It has to be a capital infrastructure item which has a life of over 5 years. So the items that we would pick would have to improve the facility and last over 5 years. We feel we could do that. For instance, retrofitting the bathrooms, the outside lighting on the poles. We do that all the time. We use infrastructure money for those things.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure that was. I know it's changed some over the years. And the other thing is, I don't have a problem with doing something. First, we own the building. It's our advantage to make sure it's in good repair. And we use other public buildings. May not be a community center building, but we use our libraries for public meetings and so on and so forth that we take care of and that we manage. Also, I know, I assume the sheriff still does, but we've used the auditorium of the sheriff's office for many events, community events. In fact, the sheriff's office in the past, when I was there, has used the Gifford Community Center for various meetings. And I think it's an important part of the community to have that facility. And I do think that it's consistent with what we've done countywide, and I agree with Commissioner Davis, we need to be consistent. And I do think that that building is well used. I know there's many meetings up there during the month. So I would be in favor of looking at your options, Joe, and seeing what we come up with. I do have a serious problem, though, with the taxing district. I just think that it's terribly unfair.
It sounds like we're clearly moving away from the MSTU, but just so we have all of our options on the table, Will, if we did do an MSTU, can we legally exempt commercial from the MSTU?
You can create the boundaries of the district any way you think is appropriate. The problem is to draw the boundaries, get the legal descriptions. You couldn't get it done by the end of the year, which the property appraiser would need.
Okay, but I just want to know if we could legally do it or and exempt commercial.
Yeah.
Although there'd be an additional cost, just so we have all of our options on the table. Okay, Commissioner Davis.
Yes, and moving in or looking at the direction that it looks like we're talking about moving into, the capital improvements I think are one that we could legitimately. I could legitimately defend to the taxpayers of Indian River County. As far as any salaries increases or anything like that in today's environment, anything that comes back, I would like to see that at the best case scenario stay where it is. We're talking about reducing staff, and now I have a hard time increasing staff somewhere else. So, and I'm only one of 4, perhaps 5 later on, but that's my opinion on how I think we ought to proceed with this.
Okay, and I think. Again, there won't be an official vote on this. We're going to table this until the 15th. But I think we're all leaning towards not exercising the MSTU. So any further discussion or questions for staff at this point in time?
I see Freddie in the audience, and I think he might. Freddie,
yeah, I'm going to open the public hearing in just a second or so. Okay, so any more questions for staff at this time? Okay, I'm going to close this meeting and open the public hearing. And before we take anybody from the floor, I have 3 emails that I'd just like to put into the public record. Jeff Brewster with Total Golf Construction is against the additional tax on commercial property. Mr. Bill Mills with 130,000 square feet of commercial property in the area is against any additional taxes on his commercial property. And Mr. William Shelley is also opposed to any additional taxes on commercial. And I'll pass these down so they can be entered in part of the record. Freddie, we'll start with you, and then we'll come.
Robert Godfrey, he's the executive director there. So
okay, we'll start to the left then.
That's right.
Yes, sir. You're welcome, and your name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. Godfrey Gibson, 4136 57th Court. I'm the director of the Gifford Community Center. I'd just like to make a couple of statements that I want to clear up. Although it is called the Gifford Community Center, this center is used by all citizens in Indian River County, from the south end to the north end. So it benefits not only the Gifford community, it benefits the entire county. Next, I would like to say, when we met, we had no intention of putting burdens on anyone, not even our citizens. We didn't, less more the commercial, we didn't want to put it on our citizens. This is why we thought the figures would be around from $21 to $25, and we thought it might just been a little more for commercial, but we had no intentions of putting burdens on anyone. Now, if you would come and visit the community center, that community center is almost 22 years old, and you can see the only damage that has been done to that building is by wear and tear of the usage, so it has not been misused. Now, the community have worked hard to try to be independent for coming here. We've had all kind of fundraising event, but as you know, the storm came in, it did a lot of damage, the insurance did not cover everything. So the monies that we had for excess usage were used up during that time. Now, as you know, the insurance premiums have increased. We're paying $8,000 to $9,000 a year for insurance, and we can no longer be solvent with this. because of the expenses that has hit everyone. So we were trying to be independent, but we just cannot afford to be that. And it is a county building. The people have donated a lot of money there. They bought the tables, the chairs. They've made improvements over the years, but it's too much now to raise that much money in 1 year. So I've heard Mr. Bear's alternative to the taxing district. We have discussed, when we heard the figures, we have discussed already the burdens of collecting all of this, and it seemed to us when we got the figures, this is not going to match. So we would appreciate if you would consider that, because we don't want to be here every year standing before you begging for money. And we are hoping, and we want everyone to know, once these improvements are made, probably the amount that we'll be given each year would be lowered, because we won't need to put in bathrooms every year. We've got air conditioning units there that are 22 years old. They can hardly find parts for them now. So, you know, they're not energy efficient. So you see where we are there, and we don't know how long. When we have an event, it's hot in the summertime. I'm just got my fingers crossed, because we don't want it to go down when we're having events there. The next thing I heard, Mr. Davis was concerned about the salaries. We're not worried about salaries. We don't care about increases in salaries, because we volunteer a lot of our time there. So salaries, you don't have to even worry about that. What we need is for the improvement and for that facilities. And it's not only for the Indian River County citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Commissioner Davis.
Mr. Gibson, I mean, that's a great point that I really see. There's, in my opinion, and Mr. Baird, I could be wrong, but $8,000 to $9,000 to insure this. There's got to be a way that we can add that as a building. I mean,
yes. Let me. It's a little inconsistent how we handle every one of these, but I think we could add them as a rider on our property and contents. However, we cannot pick up, because they're a nonprofit, their liability portion, which I think would reduce their insurance a lot, because we cannot, and well, I'm not the attorney, so correct me if I'm wrong, we cannot give them the sovereign immunity. That's what reduces our liability, and I don't want to mislead them. If they're holding an event, they have the ability to be sued for liability. But we could pick up the property, add it to our policy for a lot less than they pay.
Well, I mean, I think we really, again, go back to a consistent policy. How do we do it for Roseland? How do we do it for Rock Ridge? If there are buildings, as this one is, and you know, what is their liability? It seems like to me that's a lot of money going out of your pocket just for insurance. And I understand in the litigious society that we live in that you've got to be prepared for that. But just to insure the facility, the county should be able to do that a whole lot cheaper. I would venture to say by 50% at least. And I'd like to see a plan come back with some of those.
Yeah, we could come back with this. We'd like to treat this as a renovation project to cover it under, and do it all at once to cover it under the optional sales tax if we're going to do that for the capital. And that's what they want. They want their facility updated. They haven't been able to pay for things. We'll look at adding the insurance and we'll pay the insurance, because we do that for Rock Ridge and for the Roseland Community Center.
And that's just
then
prudent.
we'll try and keep the expenses at the 15 with those changes, and come back in a couple of weeks. And I think that's all they're asking for. And I think that would solve everyone's problem here.
Clearly go in that direction. Yeah. So, okay. Thank you, Mr. Gibson.
Okay. Thank you all.
Freddie, welcome.
Thank you. Freddie Woolfolk, 4590 5th and 7th Avenue. I sort of feel like Abraham in the Bible this morning. Going to the mount to sacrifice my son. And all of a sudden there was a ram in the bush. Mr. Beard, I think you made that quite clear. That is a great alternative. We're in no way, as the Progressive Civic League, and I'm standing in for our president who has to work at Vero Beach Utilities, Joe Outlet III, can't keep getting off because he has to make a living. But I told him I'll voice some statements for him. The first thing is that we in no way want to add any type of hardship against our residents and also our commercial property owners, because many of the commercial property owners, they give to various items in the community anyhow. But one thing I keep in my head, and it won't go away, and Commissioner Wheeler, on our last meeting when we discussed some other things, talked about the Gifford area as a different area. We can't be considered a subdivision because we have many subdivisions within the Gifford boundaries. We almost like a city or a township. And so we ask that you do keep that in mind as you look at us. Look at us in a different vein, because about 10 years ago we met in Mr. Beard's office when he was county administrator, and we kind of laid out, Dr. A. Ronald Hudson did, what the community center offers as a service. He also showed, Mr. Beard showed what it would cost the county if the county would have run that same facility. And the amount was really just out of whack compared to what we do, simply because we have people who work there, as Dr. Hudson now, as Mr. Gibson does, who are really not really looking for a salary. These are people who really, we had to force it on him to take the little small token that we pay him. He really volunteers many, many hours. So in no way are we coming asking for more money for Godfrey. No more cruises for him. So we're going to take care of that. But we are coming because we believe that the Gifford Youth Activities, the Gifford Community Center really is another opportunity to remain and obtain and maintain pride in that community. It was shown day one when Dr. A. Ronald Hudson stood up and took the directorship. He said, one thing about this facility, under my watch, and as long as the breath is in my body, that this facility will be taken care of, used, because the people of Indian River County have come together to raise funds to match with the PICO funds that we received from the state of Florida to establish this facility. So it kind of gives us a different look than Rock Ridge and others, because these educational funds came down from Tallahassee, and the Indian River County Commission took on as fiduciaries of these monies. So we are really in this game for the long haul. And which brings me to my next point, is that this facility being leased back to us, really we are asking that our leaseholders just simply help us to maintain a decent facility, because over 22 years, you go out there, the facility looks good for 22 years old. It's not shabby. People compliment Mr. Gibson and his staff. Donald Broxton, who is the building engineer custodian, does a magnificent job of maintaining that facility. So we are happy to hear that another alternative is look, I don't want any more taxes. And so I definitely, commercial with their high amount, they're being asked, don't want any more taxes. But if we can resolve this issue. But one thing I heard you say, Administrator Beard, I hope this, you said that for 5 years we can assist you. I want this to be a long-term thing. This is your facility. You're going to help us to maintain it. We're not asking for salary increases, and anything you can do to sustain that past that 5 year that you mentioned. I don't know what you meant by that, but I hope that we can come up with some type of formula.
Go ahead.
You know,
we can work that
I'm
out.
doing this on the fly, so here's what I think we've got to do to make this work. What we could do is, rather than this be a recurring cost, we all agree you want to keep the operating at $15,000 for the operating. What they want is their facility updated. What I think we should do is treat it as a renovation project. Come back in the next couple of weeks with a funding source to renovate it and bring it up to date, just like any of our other facilities. And just leave the door open for me right now, so I can take fund balance from the MSTU, fund balance from the general fund, and from the optional sales tax, and have it as one-time money to fix up the facility and update it, because it does need it, and it's not their fault. It's just a wear and tear of all the community events they have.
Yeah, and Freddie, since I've been on this board, we've had a commitment to partner up with the public on the private-public partnerships, where we have put a little money into capital and then rely on a nonprofit or volunteers to run the activity. Another great example was the soccer fields, where we put some money into putting lights on those fields, but a purely volunteer, parent-driven group to run the fields and maintain it, and they paid the cost for the electric for the lights. And now we have a major soccer tournament coming in. So I think these are all very good joint projects between private and public, and spending some money on capital, I think, is a good investment for the community. I have Commissioner Wheeler, then Commissioner Davis.
Now, I'm just going to comment on the 5 years. When I think Mr. Baird was talking about the 5 years, it came up when I asked the question of the eligibility of a project like this being able to use the 1 cent optional sales tax, and the 5-year life limit, I think, is what you were talking about. It's only 5 years I heard. It was just that, yeah, it would qualify for the 1 cent optional sales tax for the capital improvements.
Okay.
Commissioner Davis?
That's exactly what I was going to clear up, was the 5-year time period.
Okay. And Freddie, whether it's 1 year or 5 year, I think you've heard we're pretty committed to doing what it takes to get that facility back into good shape. So we will wait to see what Joe brings back to us. But it sounds like we're all very committed to getting it done.
Well, thank you for the ram in the bush. We appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Welcome.
Tony Brown, 4159 57 Court, Vero Beach. Thank you, Mr. Baird. I came here thinking one thing, this tax thing, I applaud the Civic League. They were pushed in a corner along with Mr. Baird to come up with something, fix it or lose it. And I was shocked, Mr. Baird, because I thought there should be an option. Gifford is an impoverished community. Times are hard. Nobody needs or wants taxes. But in order to keep our facility, the Civic League had to do what they did in order to try to accomplish a goal. But gentlemen of this commission, we have the stormwater taxing district, we have the street light taxing district, and then this would have been another one. I'm feeling taxation without representation. Can anyone from staff of anybody give me where this $141 million, and Stevens wrote in his article the other week, $127 million. Can anyone show me numbers where we are reaping the benefits of this tax base as a community? What Mr. Baird has said, let's get real, let's find the money to help these people. Our streets are deplorable. Our right-of-ways get mowed every 5 or 6 months. Our canals get cleaned every 6-8 months. We need to see some plausible results of our tax dollars. And to give us more taxes is to destroy us. You have old people on fixed income. If this tax goes through, Mr. Baird, what's it going to do to them? That's why I applaud you for coming up with an option. If you put taxes, you're concerned about the commercial people. Don't the county commission or the building department demand that if a developer comes in, he kicks out the excess dollars for, building new stuff? If anybody is to pay a tax, it should be a commercial businesses who take from our community and don't bring. We have the enterprise zone. What benefit is the enterprise zone to our community if we can't use the taxes from these programs? If you can't find the money, Mr. Baird, look at these enterprise zone businesses who getting all these tax loopholes, who's getting all these tax breaks, who's getting all these incentives. See if they can foot the bill for that $80,000 that Mr. Gibson needs. And really, if you look at it, Commissioner Wheeler, you brought it up. That's a minimal amount he needs to run that place. I mean, all of you are businessmen. Every one of you sitting up here are businessmen. You know he's scraping the bottom to run that facility with the use it has for $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. So I thank you, Mr. Baird and others, but please, no more taxes for the Gifford community. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Please, welcome.
Commissioner, my name is Victor Hart Sr. I'm a used to be. I'm living, but I'm a used to be. My coming up here, I didn't come up here to say nothing, but over the years, I start day one with the Progressive Civic League. But I always, when I come before you all with a decision, I go back home and talk to my folks and see how they feel about what I need to say before you all. Now, I see all these numbers are up here. I wonder where they were coming from. So, Commissioner, I'm going to be short. You know, you all say Victor long thing, but I ain't going to be alone. Whatever your commissioner do or say, make sure it comes with the consent. We don't want all of them single opinion. But if Victor stand up and tell you all something, make sure Victor got the permission from the citizen of Gifford to say what I'm saying before you all. Thank you very much.
Yes, and Mr. Hart, that's exactly what Commissioner Solari wanted to ensure, and that's why we're not going to make a final decision today. We're going to postpone it for 2 weeks to make sure that the word gets out to all of the community. And Commissioner Solari listed a whole list of various of organizations and groups in the community. He wanted to make sure they had a chance to comment on this. So we hear you loud and clear, sir. Very much.
Appreciate it.
Jeff,
good morning.
Welcome.
Jeff Thompson, Seville Avenue, Vero Beach. Got a little development out on 41st Street called Indian River Industrial Center. Just for the record, we just paid $28,790.68 in taxes. I'm not sure where it all goes, but it goes somewhere. I can't afford anymore. I'm done. You know, an extra $700 on our building alone, it doesn't sound like much. But I can tell you, it puts food on the table for one of our employees. You know, when we went to develop that piece of property, we improved that area. We paved 49th Avenue from 41st Street down to 42nd Street, whatever it is. That was not an inexpensive project, and it improved. I think it improved the community. We've supported a lot of projects in the Gifford community. And I applaud Joe Baird for coming up, trying to figure a way to come up with a plan to not tax either the residences or the businesses anymore. Because I can assure you, with the business the way it is, it's extremely difficult to meet payroll every week. You know, to call on accounts receivable, people ain't paying you. Making sure the insurances are paid. You know, unemployment's getting ready to go through the roof. We have no idea where that's going. It's a challenge. Every cotton picking day is a challenge to be in business. I don't care whether it's in the Gifford area, South County, North County. You all know it, and I can assure you that we can't handle any more taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Welcome. Your name and address for the record, please.
Art Krieger. I live at 7625 58th Court. Just for the record, let everybody know I was one of the original contractors of the Gifford Youth Center, and I do believe that that's a very important part of this community with all the functions that it performs. Mr. Baird brought up a simple solution, which I don't know why it has to be so complicated, because if that decision was on my plate as far as a businessman, you got A and B. It doesn't take much to look at. Why are you going to spend $200,000 to collect $70,000? So, you know, you really need to put forth these prudent efforts, and I know you have a lot of people to satisfy. It's almost impossible to do. You're talking about taxing the commercial people and not taxing them, and it sounds like you're not going to do that, but the commercial market hasn't hit bottom yet. Trust me. There's vacancies, rates are going down, people can't pay their bills. My construction company, which has been in business for over 20 years, I've worked in this county for over 40 years, okay? We can't make our mortgage payment, okay? And being in business for 20 years, we have an honest, dependable reputation. So we are staying alive by doing maintenance issues, home inspections. There's no construction out there. We've laid off all our employees. Our unemployment tax is going up. Our insurance is going up. We have to fight every day to be legal, licensed, and insured. We're dealing with uninsured, unlicensed contractors, and now we're talking about taxing the commercial district. You got to put the burden on the county. You got to do this the simplest, easiest way for all the people. One other suggestion. I would be willing, and maybe some other forms of trades, to be able to donate time. You know my name. You got my number. Call me. Okay. You know, just a suggestion. You know, it's all for the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your offer there, Mr. Chris.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Fleischer.
And what Mr. Krieger says, his words are golden. He has stepped up to the plate many times, and I wanted to also acknowledge last year when we had the crisis and concern about the Gifford Pool, Mr. Thompson was there. He was the first man to approach me to say, let's see what we can do. I think these words from the business community are well-deserved, well-founded, and I believe that they've been complimented by many in the room already. Mr. Chairman, I realize that we've had a public hearing announcement, and it most certainly sounds like we have a consensus to forge forward to ensure that the Gifford Center is maintained in some aspect with some of the newfound information. My question to Will Collins is, do we need to move forward with the prescribed hearings and the public announcement and go through the process?
From what I'm hearing, no. I think there's definitely consensus that this ordinance should not be adopted to create a new taxing unit, but you may want to just continue it so you have a placeholder on the meeting of the 15th to look at some of these issues that have been brought up today to come back with a funding.
After meeting with the commission, when I met with each one of you individually, you expressed your concern about this district yesterday and what it does to commercial and what a burden, and to come up with other solution. Jason and I have a solution. So I think we can come back on the 15th with the solution. And I'm taking credit for here, but it was Jason, and you guys actually told us after looking at the figures this doesn't work. So we will have definitely a solution to fix the capital improvements that need to be done by the 15th. We can do it. We've already looked at it last night. We looked at it last night, Jason and I did. Jason helped come up with this. In fact, Jason came up with most of the solutions, and we can do it. And I think we need to do it because everyone's hurting. The commercial's hurting. The people are hurting. And we don't have to create this, and I can do it relatively painless.
In that case, Commissioners, I think we don't need to continue the public hearing because I hear no support for going forward with the ordinance, and it could come back under administrators' matters.
And my concern is that I don't know if we need to have a placeholder in discussion. And my other concern is the fact that there's many people of the business community and working community that are spending time here today, and we'll probably have to do that at least one more time if we continue this process. And I think that they need to be getting back to work and earning a living. And if we found a solution or resolution to this matter.
Thank you. Commissioner Wheeler.
Yeah, the only concern I have about that is that I've had emails, I'm sure you have two others of the commissioners and staff, but and we've notified people that have emailed me, for instance, that this was going to be continued. And there's people that probably didn't show up today because they got word it was going to be continued. And I think we should continue it and finish this on the 15th. But I do think we're all in agreement. I know I feel strongly about this. And the taxing district. I just don't think it's an appropriate way to go. But I do think that there may be people that want to be heard and show up on the 15th, and we're having a meeting, and I'd be in favor of waiting. And as Commissioner Solari pointed out, wanted the community to know. And as Mr. Hart pointed out, they'd like input. And I'm hearing from both sides that there's not big support for this to begin with, but as long as we've made statements 2 weeks ago at our meeting and also responding to emails that we're going to continue this, I think we should continue it.
And Commissioner Fletcher, I understand your point there, but I do think we should continue it. I don't think it's going to cost us anything. We've already advertised this, and we will just continue it to a time certain. So, as Commissioner Wheeler said, I've told people it'd be continued, and there may be some groups that haven't been heard. I don't think anybody here today, I think we've heard their message loud and clear, so I don't think a lot of these folks will have to take off from work again. We got that message real clear. So, yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm Crystal Bouchal, and I do not live in Gifford, but I work in Gifford. And I just have a question based on what Mr. Hart asked, that the information get back to the community. In your conversation just now, I didn't hear you say that you would get the information back to the Gifford community before the 15th so we could be prepared to respond, or at least do our research or come up with our thoughts. Are you going to give information to, say, the Progressive Civic League before the 15th? Is that the plan?
Oh, yes. I'll be meeting us probably later today. We will definitely meet with them and give them our plan. I will say the plan that we've got does not increase any taxes anywhere. We've come up with a plan using our fund balance. I think everyone will be happy. Okay. We're going to get the capital improvements done. We're going to, try and stop everyone's pain and get something done. That's what we're going to do.
Thank you.
And Joe, I think we have an email list of all the other organizations, not just the Progressive League.
Yes, we do.
And we'll make sure we get the notification on all of them. Commissioner Wheeler and Commissioner...
Also, ma'am, one of the reasons that we talked about moving this to the 15th was after we notified everybody in the community that they would have an opportunity between now and the 15th and even before now to notify everybody because of their scheduling of meetings and so on and so forth. So that's been taking place.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes, and the whole issue of the 15th is just for the MSTU. It's not for the new program that we're talking about coming forward with. It's simply for the MSTU. And in the event that we went that way, we had to get that started and have it on the ad valorem tax bill for next year. So even if we need to go past the 15th, we can still do what we're talking about doing, because I'm certainly not in favor of creating the MSTU.
Okay. Dan, welcome.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if as Commissioner Flesher said, I'm not sure I'll be able to be here on the 15th due to some work, but I thought I'd take this opportunity to just say a few items. First off, remind me never to follow Freddie. He's so eloquent. He makes everybody after him look horrible, like we've never went to English class. Well done, Freddie. And I saw Teddy here earlier also, and I'm glad he's gone. I don't want him to get mad at me here. First off, unlike Freddie, I don't feel like Abraham. I feel like more like a used car salesman. You've already signed the deal and looks like you bought the car, and I'm still up here trying to sell it to you. But in any event, I thought since I'm here, I'll be there. And Joe being called a ram in a bush, that was interesting. Very good, Freddie. I'm here with five. There's five of us that are in the fresh fruit packing industry that are within this district as currently proposed and defined. Several of them are with me today, but we've got Trey Smith left just a minute ago, Ray Smith, Michael Saline, Cody Estes, Don Groves, and I think I saw Rusty Banak in the back. It represents five fresh fruit packing houses. Also, Jack Sturgis is an advocate of what I have to offer this morning. But basically, I think the five businesses that are here in the citrus industry, our records speak for themselves. We've been advocates and supporters of the Gifford Civic Center, both financially and in person. We're not debating that. We are advocates of this facility. I think it's a great facility, and it's extremely well run by the folks there. Again, it's a great community asset, and as others have said, it is used by the entire community. I've coached basketball there. I've worked with Teddy on the football, the recreational deal. So it is something that the entire community does use. It is not just a geographic facility. We are very opposed to a special taxing district. You've pushed my hot button, and you've pushed the hot buttons of our industry, I can tell you. We are especially if it was going to be limited to a neighboring area of a community asset that serves the entire community. We're not going to get into an economic debate here. That's for another day. But just briefly, the five packing houses here employ over 1,000 residents. Five of us currently pay in total well over $1 million in taxes to this county. We participate in the county optional fuel taxes. We have multiple vehicles running these roads, and I don't even know what that number is, but it's extensive. The impact of our industry, we believe, does go unnoticed. We don't ask for much. We participate in the community in all aspects of it, from the United Way to our taxes to plenty of others. And while this industry has challenges that are well documented in the newspaper, be it citrus canker, be it greening, be it market access, be it urban encroachment, on and on and on, we are not going anywhere. I point to you behind you, the Great Seal of Indian River County. What is it? That is going to be here. Our industry is going to survive. We are not going anywhere. We are not leaving this county, and we will not diminish our participation in the county. We are entrenched in this area, in the county, but specifically in the area. I estimated that Riverfront Packing Company, which is our company, would pay 1.7% of the total of this special taxing district as it is, and collectively, between the five of us, we would probably pay upwards of 10% of this tax, just the 5 packing houses. So our request is simple, and I think you're there, to review this and find an alternative funding mechanism for the community center. Do not approve a special taxing district. As Joe mentioned, it's costly and extremely inefficient. The center is used by the entire community and should be supported by the entire community. And if you determine funding is necessary, which I believe you do and you believe you have, find alternative sources and do not use a special taxing district to achieve this objective. Thanks for your time and appreciate your consideration.
Thank you very much, Dan. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak on this matter?
You want a motion to postpone?
Yeah.
No, you have to.
Go ahead.
You have to end.
We got to close it, and then we'll make a motion.
Close the public.
Okay. Close the public hearing. Let the record show that ample opportunity was provided for all to speak on this. And
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Davis, yes.
Move to postpone to the next meeting.
Second.
To the next meeting or the 15th?
The 15th. Excuse me.
Okay. So Commissioner Davis, second by Commissioner Flesher, to postpone this to a period certain of December 15th. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Carries unanimously. At this point, we'll take a 10-minute recess for the closed captioning. We'll be back at 10:45. We'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order. Where we left off is public hearing number 2, Shell Lane East, a portion of Summer Place Petition Sewer Service in Indian River County, project number UCP 4039, preliminary assessment resolution the third. This is administrative, and Dan, good morning.
Good morning. Dan Chastain, Manager of Assessment Projects. Staff is seeking your approval today of the Resolution 3 and the preliminary assessment roll. This would affirm it for the 10 properties on Shell Lane East that would be served and would benefit from this assessment project. I don't know if there's anyone here to speak today. I've not heard of any opposition at this point.
Okay, Dan, just a quick question. 8 of the 10 have signed the petition. Have the other 2 been contacted and they're aware of it and they just don't support it? Is that
They were out of the area, and I don't believe that there was any great energy put out to try to contact them. Others, circulated the petition, and they were assured that 8 would be more than adequate to handle it. We've certainly had no opposition, but everyone's been notified.
Okay, by everyone, you mean all 10?
All property owners were notified.
Okay, so just the 2 of them didn't respond to the notification?
Right.
Okay. All right. Is there any questions of staff at this point? If not, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this item? Mr. Glenn, welcome. Come up, please. Bill, if you could give your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Bill Glenn. I live at 1802 East Barefoot Place in a little community known as Summer Place in Vero Beach 32963. I'm president of the Summer Place Improvement Association, which is the homeowners association that helps that area maintain its sanity. I came in for 2 things. First of all, we are a community of dirt roads. By our own want, we really did want dirt roads. And these dirt roads, as I'm sure staff can tell you, dirt roads don't appear out of anywhere. It takes years to build them up, put layers after layer of shell on them, etc. One of the problems that we looked at, and incidentally, we did approve an easement for the utilities division so that they could go forward with this, but we don't have yet any answer as to how this road is going to be repaired when it's done. If it was asphalt, we know what they would do, and that's not a problem. But this is not the type of thing where you can just push the dirt back in the ditch and hope it's there, because if we do, within the first rainstorm, we'll lose a couple cars in the ditch. So that's one of the things we need to find out, is what they plan to do to repair that road so that it is at least what it is today. The second thing is, and I've not been able to get an answer on this anywhere, but has anybody looked into the possibilities of obtaining a grant to do this work? This work is being done primarily to protect the ocean. Although it doesn't need the protection, it's one of the reasons why it's being done. And it is a good area as far as adjacency to the ocean goes. And we've had people raise the question of whether or not septics are good to have that close to the ocean. And this is going to slowly but surely cure that entire problem. And we wondered if some chance there was funds available through Tallahassee or even through the federal government that could help defray the expense on this. That's 10 people that own properties there. Most of them are widows, and a couple of them are not. 2 at the very end of the street on the ocean is 2 doctors who have very nice homes, minor McMansions as we describe them. And other than that, we've got several lots that have not been built on, and as I said before, majority of the rest of them are owned by widows. The 2 of the people that did not answer was Mrs. Romano and Mrs. Hickey. Mrs. Hickey lives up in Connecticut, and Mrs. Romano lives up in Lake Lure, New York. And they will be coming down in the not too far distant future, I'm sure, but I don't know when. But I would like to know if it was possible that we could perhaps have somebody look at this. I don't know whether we have somebody that handles your grants, but if you do, maybe they could take a look at it and see if something is available. I knew grant money was available when Little Orchid Island was going to have sewers put in on it. And then when that cost was held off, because it really didn't need the sewers, that grant money went somewhere. So obviously there is grant money for this type of thing. And it would be very, very favorable to these people, who are oceanside people but not very, very well-to-do people. And it And any way we can help them, we'd like to.
Okay. Bill, to answer your first question, I know the petition projects we've done in the past, be it paving or water or sewer, I know that the after condition is either the same or better than the prior condition. So as far as the road, drainage, swales, all those kind of things, it's usually in much better shape after the project than before. So we'll make sure that things are as good or better after the construction is done. Dan, I don't know, can you address the issue if there's grant money available, please?
No, I haven't. I haven't spoken to anybody about it. This gentleman here might have information on it. I don't know.
Really pursued grant money on this particular project.
No, it's right on the base of the microphone. Dan, should be a green light when you're on.
Haven't really pursued it on this particular project. One thing that initiated the project was the need for a CO on one of the homes. The engineering firm that's done the engineering on this had most of the interaction with the property owners, and they wanted to put this on a fast track to get it done very quickly. It's a fairly simple design, and by doing it as an assessment, we can go ahead and get this bid out and get the project in the ground, and at least it will enable one of the owners to go ahead and get a CD. If we started at this late point in the process of this project seeking grant money, and if we should be fortunate enough to obtain a grant, which I question, it could delay the project significantly. I don't know how long.
I don't think there's, Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
I don't think there's any need to delay the project, but I think that it would behoove, anytime we're doing something like this, especially near bodies of water, that it simply makes sense to try to remove the septics without delaying the project, or at least, I would say, implement the policy to almost have that on the checklist as we move forward with the assessment project, to be able to say we're going to pursue these grants, and this is this would be your assessed amount if we do not receive any, and if we do, this is what we're anticipating receiving from the grant, and then let them make up their mind as as a community. I don't think Bill's wanting to slow this down. I think he's just looking for some opportunities there. And it would also make it, if we have that policy in place, I think it's a good thing to get some of these septic tanks away from some of these bodies of water where they may or may not be leaching into.
I'm in agreement with you.
That pretty much answers my first question, and I appreciate that. I'm sure that if they decided to give us the money after the job is finished, you all wouldn't turn it down. It might not be a bad idea to check it out and see if it's possible that those funds are available. I believe they are available in Tallahassee, and I think that, as you said, there's no way in the world we can afford to delay this thing. This gentleman that he's talking about has been waiting 2 years to get into his house because of a problem just like this. And it shows you the need is there. But thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak to this? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Let the record show that ample opportunity was provided to all. Gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman, move to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Davis and a second from Commissioner Flesher. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. 10B, public discussion items. I had a request from the attorney for Ms. Kiles to pull item 10B, so we will pull that from the agenda. Mr. Wells, I see you here, but you're not on the agenda. Are you just watching again?
We got 8W yet.
Okay.
Public notice, item C.
Didn't we move 8W to public hearings?
Yes, we did. Well, public notice.
Public notice?
Yeah, public notice.
I'm sorry.
All right, so Mr. Wells, you're good. You're just observing? Okay, thank you. That brings us to public notice items. This was item 8W that we moved. Mr. Collins, would you like to?
This was a request to set a public hearing date regarding an application for certificate of public convenience and necessity for a Class B certificate from the We Care of the Treasure Coast to provide non-emergency BLS ambulance interface transports, but doesn't say in the agenda the date of that hearing.
It says December 15th.
Thank you.
We can still make that deadline, 2 weeks' notice?
Well, I'm assuming it'll be tight for advertising. If the ad hasn't run, they probably can't.
You want to make it for December?
John, do you know where we are on this? Well, we have our schedule coming up after that.
Well, do we have another one during December after the 15th?
Good morning, Commissioners. I thought it was for the 15th, but if you feel more comfortable, we can make it the 22nd.
We don't have a meeting scheduled for the 22nd, so we'll have to jump to our...
Well, the question, John, normally there's at least 10 days notice, and I know the Press-Journal has lead time on their ads. Can you get an ad that meets the required notice time periods before the 15th?
I believe yes.
Mr.
But if there's any concern, I don't mind moving it back to the next meeting.
The next meeting day would be January 5th, 2010.
I believe if 10 days, I mean, that's plenty. Just running regular ads, that you should be able to get that done. And this is public notice, so if we don't do it, all we do is come back with a public notice again.
That's correct. Right.
I mean, it's not. There's no action necessary. This is just notifying the public that we're going to advertise for that date.
Our intent is to have the hearing on the 15th if we can meet the advertising requirement.
Okay.
Yes.
And no motion necessary, correct?
Yeah, this is just public notice items. All right, so we'll stick with the December 15th targets.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
That takes us to item 11A, County Administrator Matters, meetings of the Board of County Commissions. Joe?
Move approval.
I have a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, under discussion, the summer weeks, so we've got a pretty big gap between July 20th to August 17th. It's 3 weeks, and then 3 weeks more between 18th and September 7th. And then we have a November 23rd meeting, which is just a couple days before Thanksgiving. I think I'd rather give up the November 23rd meeting, and we already have 3 meetings in November prior to that, and add maybe a meeting like August 10th or something, so there's not such a big gap there.
Not me.
No, and also, that's right in the middle of budget for staff, and that's typically why we've done that in the past. I don't mind.
Yes, there's two or three reasons. There's so many meetings in the month of July. First of all, you're doing your capital, your land acquisition. I mean, sorry, not land. That's comp plan. You've got your comp plan. You've got your budget. We have just a ton of meetings, and there's 2 reasons for that. Is usually after that, it's the only time period that planning and budget staff get to go with their families, and also the commission's worn out. So that's why we've always picked it. It's up to you as a commission. We just set it up based on other year schedules.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I'll accommodate you on November if you want to, but other than that, I'd like to leave it the way it is.
Okay. Commissioner Wheeler, would you like to amend your motion to delete the November 23rd meeting?
Okay.
Okay, and you second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Commissioner Fleischer, any discussion?
No, I actually preferred your recommendation, but looking at the numbers right now.
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the schedule as amended with the deletion of November 23rd. Any further discussion? Seeing none, proceed to vote. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimous 4-0. Thank you. That now takes us to Departmental Matters, 12A, Community Development. Consideration of eMindful, Inc.'s request for a local jobs grant. Memorandum dated November 18, 2009. And Bob, welcome.
Good morning. I'm Bob Keating. I'm County Community Development Director. And this item relates to a jobs grant request from eMindful. And eMindful is an internet-based integrated healthcare provider. And they plan to create 100 new jobs in the county. Now, with this number of jobs, eMindful is eligible for the maximum amount of jobs grant money available that we will give to a company, and that's $500,000 unless they locate in the enterprise zone where they would get an extra 10%. So if they do locate there and they haven't decided where their final office will be, it could be up to $550,000. In this case, eMindful is also applying for state qualified target industry tax refund program funds. And if eMindful receives those QTI funds, these job grant funds can be used as the county's required 10% match for the QTI program. So essentially the jobs grant money can actually be used to generate additional funds for eMindful. As with all all of these jobs grant programs, the jobs grant money will be provided over a 3-year period after the jobs are created. So it's not all at one shot. It's over a period, and the funds will come from the county's general fund. In this case, staff's reviewed eMindful's application and found that it meets all the jobs grant requirements, and therefore staff recommends that the Board of County Commissioners approve a jobs grant for eMindful up to $500,000 or $550,000 if they locate in the enterprise zone, that you approve the resolution that's attached to the staff report indicating the county's support for the QTI program, and then also authorize the chairman to sign the jobs grant application. At this time, I would like to turn it over to Helene Castletine, who can introduce eMindful's CEO.
Good morning. It's still good morning.
Still morning. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Helene Castletine. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce. And we are so pleased to have a company like eMindful looking at Indian River County as their home base, their corporate headquarters. We've been working with the company since early this year. This is a clean industry. They're great jobs. Twice the average wage of what Indian River County currently pays. It's a target industry. As Bob indicated, the company is applying for a local jobs grant as well as the state's Qualified Target Industry Tax Refund Program. As a target industry for Indian River County, they meet the eligibility criteria. They also, as a corporate headquarters, would meet the eligibility criteria for the state. We are not the only community that the company is considering for its corporate headquarters. They do have others who, part of their executive team, located in Tucson, Arizona, and Cleveland, Ohio, and they too would prefer to see that corporate headquarters located in their respective cities.
That's because they've never been here.
Well, that's probably here. So we are applying for these two programs to entice the company to make that decision to locate their corporate headquarters in Indian River County, and in doing so hire up to 100 people, local residents, for those great jobs. So at this point, what I would like to do is introduce Kelly McCabe-Ruff. Kelly is the CEO of eMindful, and she can maybe explain a little bit about what their company will do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having me here. I'm Kelly McCabe-Ruff, CEO of eMindful, and I reside here in Vero Beach.
Thank you, Bill.
And I'm just going to take 2 or 3 minutes to give you a very brief overview of our company, and a little bit about our direction and our anticipated growth with respect to these 100 positions. Very briefly, what we do is we offer live online classes. The classes are primarily in 2 topic areas. One is mindfulness, the other is yoga. Both of these are considered forms of complementary medicine. We have a very experienced team, senior management team. I won't get into the particulars of it, but it's in the handout that you're currently looking at. And we currently employ 10.5 full-time equivalents. The breakout is as shown in your handout. So we basically have 3 businesses that we're targeting. One is our core classes. This is something that we've been doing since 2006, the end of 2006. We have significant collaborations with a number of different universities, including Duke Integrative Medicine, with whom we have co-developed a number of different mindfulness programs. That's a big part of the Duke Integrative Medicine program. We also have a collaboration with University of Arizona College of Medicine that provides us with the continuing education credits that we offer physicians. And we also have recently submitted an SBIR grant with Duke Medical School, and we received a preliminary score on that grant of 41, which is falls in the very good range. So we think we're likely to be funded for that. Our second core business is something we call Service Co. Service Co basically provides a host to other entities who wish to offer online classes. We provide all the technical and customer support for those entities, and we derive a fee for doing so. And then the last, excuse me, the last is a direct-to-the-consumer business. Basically, this is a business that we intend to further in the 2011-2012 timeframe. We currently do offer our classes to the general public, but we don't put a lot of marketing effort in this particular business. So our value add basically is that we contribute to the bottom line of a company or even to an individual. Basically what we do is we improve people's health and well-being, which reduces costs for a company or for an individual, and also improves productivity. So I've got a slide up here that shows an actual result of one of our clients. You can see that their healthcare costs were trending upward from 2001 through 2006 when we became involved with them. At that point, they were at $3.5 million, and as of the end of 2008, they had cut their costs by $2 million. So, what we're looking to do is hire a total of 100 people additional over the next 2+ years. You can see what the average salaries are and the years that we're expecting to hire these people. And that's basically it. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Commissioner Davis?
It's a neat presentation, just a couple of things. One of them is with the savings in the health care costs for that company, did the personnel or staffing level stay the same?
Yes, it did.
I guess then, Mr. Chairman, one thing that I like about this is this is only you only get this when you perform. And,
that's correct.
And so as far as any downside to the taxpayers, to me, it's all upside. And I'm certainly excited to see so many businesses, not just yourself, come forward and utilizing this. It's I don't know if it's, I'm sure every community has it, but we must be doing something, I think, right. You're at least the third, I think, that has come before us. Yes. And to see businesses like yourself come forward. And I ask this of everybody that's gone through this process, if there's something that we can do after this. Obviously, we're here. But just as importantly, if there's something in this process that you think as being an individual or business that has utilized this tool for economic development, if there's something that we can do to improve upon it, I'd certainly like to hear about it and have it come through our EDC, and I believe you're going to be chairing that or be the liaison for that again. Yep. But welcome, and looking forward to success.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Kelly did make a presentation for the EDC, and they unanimously supported the job grant application. I have two things. Just one, during that discussion at the EDC, because this is so internet-based, there was little concern to make sure that the jobs would be here locally. Kelly indicated they would. I just think Bill is putting in here that there will be some documentation to show the employees are in the local region area. And it's a good point you brought up, because this all is retroactive. It's paid over a 3-year period on a retroactive basis, so the company would have to document through workers' insurance compensation receipts to show that job was actually there, was paid for, and that also helps document the salary range. So I think it is a good investment for taxpayer dollars, because we're paying after the fact, after that job has been here for the year before we pay. And I just did a rough calculation based on the bare minimum, and I think your average salaries are going to be a little higher. But basically, if all 100 jobs come in, it's going to be over a $5 million payroll that the county will be getting year after year after year for an investment of $500,000 over 3 years. So I think it is an extremely good cost benefit for the county. So, Commissioner Wheeler, do you have anything to add, or you're good? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Davis to approve. Commissioner Wheeler, second. Any further discussion? Anyone from the audience wish to speak on this? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you, and we look forward to having eMindful here in Indian River County. Thank you.
The official welcome.
Yes. The official welcome. Okay. That takes us to 12D, Human Resources, County Attorney Hiring Process, narrowing the field of candidates. Mr. Sexton, welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jim Sexton, Human Resources Director, for the record. Today I'd let you know that we are right on schedule. Basically what we've done is we've discussed the position of hiring a new county attorney. We have posted the position in several periodicals. And just to give you an update on that of where we recruited and how we got to where we are, we placed an ad in the local press journal. We used the services of the Florida League of Cities datagram. We put it in two of their publications. We've used the Florida Bar News, their online and their newspaper publication, and we posted to the Florida Association of Counties. Today we've spent $1,075 in advertising, which is not high at all. Two of those publications, Press Journal and the Florida Bar News, were the biggest hit. They were a total of about $900. So the rest of it was with Florida League of Cities and Florida Association of Counties. Some no-cost advertising that we were able to take advantage of is through our own Indian River County Florida Bar Association, where they did an email blast and an announcement at one of their meetings, and also Will Collins sent out an email blast to a listserv of County Attorney Association members. What we netted from that was a total of 23 candidates that met the stated requirements that the board discussed prior to the posting. And the closing date was November 13th. And here we are today on December 1st to discuss narrowing the field of 23 candidates down to a manageable number, and whether the board wants to go forward in asking for a writing assignment or issuing a request for more information from the chosen candidates. Since Commissioner Solari is not here today, he did email me his selections of who he'd like to see. He sent me a top 7. So I thought the way we'd run today is we could have a discussion and you guys would let me know who you would like to see narrowed down in the field, and what I'll do here is I'll track that on a sheet I have here, and then at the end I'll total up the number of votes that each of the candidates get, and then we'll determine a cutoff of maybe all 5 votes. Obviously they'll move forward in the process. Candidate with 4 votes, maybe they move forward, and then we'll see where the cutoffs are of who has 3 votes, who has 2 votes, etc. And then at the end of that discussion, if there's a commissioner who has a really strong feeling about a certain candidate that may not have gotten the votes per the tally sheet, you can certainly make that argument to your fellow commissioners that you'd really like to see that person move forward in the process. Okay. So with that, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Yes, Jim, probably what we'll do then, why don't we start down here with Commissioner Flesher, and then we'll just kind of go in order. When we get to Commissioner Solari's spot, if you could call out his selections just so we have it for the public. So, certainly. With that, Commissioner Flesher, do you want to go ahead and read your list, please?
In no specific order of preference, just as far as review of their initial paperwork. Alan Polakowicz.
Okay.
James Richmond. Rich Stringer.
Okay.
G. Allen Sermons.
Okay.
Mike Zito.
Okay.
Melissa Anderson.
All right.
Marion Fell.
Okay.
Mike Hunt.
Okay.
Tom Spencer. And Ralph Brooks.
All right, I have all 10.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Davis.
Now, do you want them in order, or just do you?
No
want,
ranking
want
order necessary at this point. Just the ones you'd like to see move forward in the process.
Okay. All right. Ralph Brooks, Jeff Kleiman, Bill DeBraw, Jean Marie Milton, Matthew Minter, Alan Polakowicz, James Saunders, Spencer Thomas, Rich Stringer, and Mike Zito.
All right, I have your 10.
Okay. I have Alan Polakowicz. Again, no particular order.
Right.
James Saunders.
Okay.
Michael Hunt. James Richmond. Matthew Minter. Michael Zito. Jean Marie Middleton. Thomas Spencer. Melissa Anderson, and Ralph Brooks.
All right, I have your 10. Thank you.
Okay. If you would read Commissioner Solari's selections for the record, please.
Commissioner Solari chose 7 candidates to move forward. Melissa Anderson, Jean Marie Middleton, Matthew Mentor, Alan Palakowicz, James Richmond, Thomas Spencer, and Michael Zito.
Thank you. And Commissioner Wheeler, your selections, please.
Palakowicz, DeBrawl, and Zito.
Nothing like following instructions.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Wheeler. Jim, you need just a minute to tally those up?
He's got a logarithm.
He's the HR director. We may have to take an hour break.
According to Joe and the HR math, we might need to take a short break.
Can we get Jason down here to help?
Jason has it in spreadsheet already.
Cue in the Jeopardy music.
Okay, I have, 2 candidates with 5 votes. That's Michael Zito and Alan Palakowicz. So I think it's fair to say that they would move on to the next process. I have 1 candidate with 4 votes. That is Thomas Spencer. So I think that's safe to say he can move on to the next process. And then I have 5 candidates with 3 votes. And that would bring us to 8. If we wanted to stop at 8, we could certainly do that. And then I have 3 candidates with 2 votes, and that's James Saunders, Michael Hunt, and William DeBraw. So we have a clear 5s and 4s. We have 5 with 3, and that gets us to 8 with 3 or more votes.
Okay, can you give us the 5 that have the 3 votes, please?
Certainly. Melissa Anderson, Ralph Brooks, Jean Marie Middleton, Matthew Mentor, James Richmond.
Okay, so that's 8, and then we have, you said there's 3 that have 2 votes?
Yes, and that's William DeBraw, Michael Hunt, and James Saunders.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, and I thought I had Stringer with 2 votes, I believe.
I had him as well.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry, you're right.
Okay.
That's the HR math. Richard Stringer had 2 votes as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Davis, go ahead.
Who were the 5 and the 4, or how many of the top?
5 votes, Michael Zito, Alan Palakowicz.
Okay, and 4?
Thomas Spencer.
Okay.
So I guess we have a couple options here as a board. We can either just pick those top 3, the 5 vote getters and the 4 vote getter, and then just bring those in for interviews, or go with what Jim had proposed. Either go with 8 and then look at the 4 that only have 2 votes, and then send them some type of additional writing request or something to narrow it down further from there. So any discussion? I'll start down here. Commissioner Fletcher?
Well, by and large, I see that we can narrow down the field with the top vote getters, but I don't believe that was the initial plan or design. Each of us have had the opportunity to look at the candidates in our own regards and respect, and it does sound that there is a consistent pattern, but I would like to see all of the applicants that have been selected or graded beyond 2 for a writing sample. Again, just by resume and by their direct writing, I don't think that that's enough to look at for the position of county attorney. And I believe that we would like to see, I as one county commissioner would like to see a sampling of their best work move forward. So I believe that if we look at how the numbers lied. We're looking at a dozen applications to review. We've just completed the review of 23 applications and narrowed it down less than just at about 50%. And I just believe that the taxpayer should also have the opportunity for us to review further before we make such a concrete decision.
Okay. Commissioner Davis, any comments from you, please?
I would feel comfortable moving forward with the top three. And as far as what fashion, I'm almost ready for something face-to-face. Maybe I am jumping a process here, and maybe protocol says they should write us an essay and us judge them on that. But I don't know. I'm ready to look them in the eye.
Okay, Commissioner Wheeler.
I agree with Commissioner Davis. Totally.
Well, you only had three to begin with, so we know.
And that would be consistent of the three that you selected. But I believe that we should give the opportunity for everybody to be evaluated. I am ready for a face-to-face as well, but I believe that we can accommodate by looking at all of the aspects that we each have looked at. Okay. You've already ranked them.
I did. I mean, whenever I can give it to you in order if I thought that's the way it was going to go here today, and then whoever had the most top is where it's going to kind of narrow it down versus just the. But that's all right.
Jim, from a human resource point of view, do you have a recommendation whether to just go directly to some face-to-face with the top three, or?
I certainly don't have a problem with the board setting up interviews, and we could do it as a big group interview where we have each commissioner in one of the conference rooms throughout Building A and then kind of rotate the candidates around. So I have no preference of whether we ask for a writing assignment or whether we move straight to interviews. If you feel you've got three strong candidates that you believe one of those top three are going to be your next county attorney, why put the several weeks of more process reviewing 90 pages of writing assignments? I mean, somebody could turn in a 90-page brief that they submitted to a Supreme Court, and it'd be very impressive, but I don't know if that's going to help you narrow the field. So my thought is, if you have a list of three strong candidates you'd like to see as your next county attorney, I'd say you go straight to the interview process.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Commissioner Wheeler.
Yeah, just to reiterate, I'm not interested in reading an essay from an attorney. You're not really going to get a feel. You've got the applications, you look at them, and I want to meet them.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion to proceed with the top three to schedule interviews. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second from Commissioner Davis. Is there any further discussion? Anyone from the public wish to speak on this? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign.
Aye.
Passes 3-1 with Commissioner Flesher in opposition. Okay, Jim, you will just schedule that, and we'll try to coordinate
I'll start
a date or a time when everybody's going to be in town.
Yes, sir.
If the commissioners could let Jim know if there's any time in the next few weeks you're going to be out of town or unavailable, and then he'll try to schedule those meetings. Okay?
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, if I could, I know that I have specific questions that I would like to ask. At the same time, without any violation of any sunshine law, I mean, maybe we'd have to do it, I don't know, video or something. I'd like to hear what the other commissioners' questions are. Just see if they're thinking about something that perhaps I'm overlooking, that very well, maybe a question that I didn't ask changed my opinion, but perhaps one that they did may change my opinion. And I don't know how, Mr. Collins, we could make that happen, or I'm not trying to make this so burdensome, but that's why we only have three here, but we have 5 commissioners that he needs to work with all of us.
I'm trying to think of a process where you could sit in on the interviews that the others were conducting without participating in the interview yourself. Yeah. I think if you do that, it'd have to be a sunshine meeting. It'd have to be open to the public. And
what if we do it? Is there any way we could perhaps do it in one of the meeting rooms that we've just gotten some? I just need a video, not even video, just audio. I just want to hear their response to questions, because I think
another alternative, you could have them in a forum like this and have one come in at a time, and each of you pose questions that you have to that one, and you all hear the same answers at a specially called meeting.
I think
another alternative is a hybrid.
Counties have done that when they're hiring a city manager or county administrator. They have an open public workshop like that. Joe?
You could also have a hybrid where we're going to turn it into a list of questions, and the HR director makes them, and you still interview them, ask other questions, but it's a hybrid. What happens then? You don't have it in a public forum. That's just a suggestion that you all turn in questions that you think the main questions you're going to ask.
I appreciate that, but as much as some specific qualities that I think that I'm looking for, one of those clearly is the ability to think on your feet quickly, not to give you a question in advance and see how well you can do a dissertation on it. And I don't know. That's maybe I'm throwing something in here that either A, can't be done, or maybe with just a little bit more thought without having to come up with something right now.
I think one thing is that the county attorney is obviously a very public position. It's somebody who's going to be out in front of the public, and if these candidates can't handle answering questions from the public now, then they're probably not going to do a good job if they get hired. So I'm not in opposition to having a public open workshop, and I think it kind of follows what we've done as a board. We've always tried to be as open to the public as possible, and given the salary range and the amount of tax dollars that will be going into this, maybe having a public workshop is appropriate.
Okay.
Commissioner Wheeler, do you?
I understand. I've got mixed emotions. I think that what you're stating, Peter, is accurate, but also I think there's some advantages to having a relaxed, non-public dialogue with someone. You let your hair down, you're a little more open rather than worrying about what you look like on the monitor or who's watching or what the press is going to write tomorrow, and more easily picking your words. But we are dealing with attorneys, and most of them are very able to do their job in front of the public. So I've got mixed emotions. I could go either way. I like the idea of a public hearing, but I also like the idea of questioning them privately. So I could flip a coin, go either way, whatever the commission would.
I'm not comfortable making a decision on that right now, because Commissioner Wheeler, you're right. I don't want a bunch of responses in sound bites or quotable quotes.
Yeah, I don't like giving them questions in advance.
No, definitely not. And that's what I do not want to do.
Yeah, and in a public forum, if we had the questions, they're going to be sitting here and they can hear, and the guy that comes first has got an advantage or a disadvantage over the guy that comes last. It's just, I see, like they clear the courtroom when you have witnesses and you're trying to see how they perform. So, like I said, mixed emotions. I could go either way, but I probably would lean a little more toward private interviews.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Davis.
Our assignment today was to narrow down the list. I think we've done that. It wasn't to develop a format just yet. And I think we've got some time, if that's okay with you. I would suggest, or even make a motion, let's just move forward with the three names that we have here. And
you want me to bring back a process on the 9th, or what's the next meeting, 17th?
15th.
15th?
No, the 8th.
Okay. So there's meeting the 8th and then the 15th.
Right.
Okay.
So at one of those meetings, bringing back a process, or?
How are we going to do? We're talking about two processes. What's the? I'm not sure I understand the time delay. I think.
Yeah.
Let's just.
Mr. Chair.
Well, let me just throw this out. From what I'm hearing, it sounds like there's a little bit more support to have individual private meetings. So why don't we just have Jim set those up, and we'll work with our schedules, and then. And Commissioner Davis, I understand completely your point of wanting to hear how they answered other questions that maybe you hadn't thought of, and maybe we can come back in a public agenda item and discuss the questions we all asked the candidates and have a little debate at that point, and that way you'd get the answers everybody else got.
Also, Mr. Chairman, I suppose we could do both. We could meet privately, ask our questions, and then have a public forum and ask additional questions if we want, based on all of us being exposed to them, and the public would still have input there, but we'd have a better feel for who they really are. Another possibility.
Okay. Well, Jim, let's set up the private meetings and we'll go from there, if that's okay with
Mr. Chairman, I fully support the private meetings.
All right, and I don't think we need a vote or anything. We'll just move forward with that. All right.
Do we have a vote on narrowing down to 3?
We did vote on that 3-1, right, with Commissioner
And
Fletcher.
just to make sure we're all on the same page, I have Michael Zito, Alan Polakowicz, and Thomas Spencer. That's the top 3.
That's, I think, the 3 I had. Correct. Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
That takes us to 12I, Public Works, staff update on Sector 3 beach renourishment. Jonathan?
Good morning, Jonathan Gorham, Coastal Resource Manager. I'm here this morning with our latest periodic update on our progress with Sector 3 beach restoration permitting. At this point, we remain on our schedule for permit issuance no later than February 1st. At this time, the ball is really in the regulatory agency's court. We've addressed all the comments and questions and concerns that we've received by the regulatory agencies on our submittals. On the state side of the permitting, the Department of Environmental Protection, we've responded to DEP's comments and suggestions on our submittal. DEP has acknowledged the receipt of that response on November 30. With our latest submittal, we've notified DEP that we consider the application to be complete with this latest submittal. What that does is it begins a 30-day regulatory clock for DEP for the issuance of the draft permit. We're hopeful that this draft permit can be issued before this 30-day time period expires. On the federal side of our application, with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Fish and Wildlife Service, we have received the long-awaited draft biological opinion from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We received that on November 25th, and we've reviewed that document and provided our comments back to the service. The issuance of this biological opinion is a critical path in both the federal permitting and the state permitting. So we'll be seeking this week a commitment from the service on when they expect this biological opinion to be signed by the director here in Vero Beach and issued. Similarly, on the state side, our consultant Michael Walther with Coastal Tech has scheduled a meeting with DEP staff up in Tallahassee for December 3rd to seek a similar commitment from them on the schedule for the issuance of the draft permit. Additionally, and at the suggestion of Chairman O'Brien, we're preparing a page for the county's website to provide similar updates on our progress to the public on our permitting and construction when we get into the construction phase, and also providing a forum for answering any questions on the project from the public. We will expect to have that page up on the county's website by Friday. Be happy to take any questions.
Commissioner Davis.
Just real quick, Jonathan, I'm assuming that you'll be answering most of those questions, or Chris Moore, whenever the comments if they have some comments or questions about the project as it moves forward from the website.
That's right. The link would direct questions to my email, and I'd seek any assistance from Mr. Mora on getting those answers.
All right, great.
Okay. Anything? Just like to add, the staff at the Fish and Wildlife Office here in Vero Beach, particularly Jeff Howe, who was the main writer of the biological opinion, they really stepped up and worked hard to get that opinion done to where it is now, and that was, as Jonathan said, a critical piece to keep this thing moving forward timely. And I'd just like the public to recognize and acknowledge the hard work that the Fish and Wildlife guys put into getting this moving. So with that, Jonathan, thank you very much. We appreciate the update.
Thank you.
That takes us to County Attorney Matters, 13A, realignment of 101st Avenue, 102nd Terrace. Bill, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Bill DeBrawl, Deputy County Attorney. First matter that we have to discuss today is the realignment of 101st Avenue, 102nd Terrace. You recall that there were two phases involved in a recent property exchange with the Board of Trustees of the Governor's Cabinet. The county purchased Calvert Island, an island in the Sebastian River, together with the Dean Tract. The Dean Tract was surrounded on three sides by the Sebastian Preserve State Park. We exchanged those for a stormwater pond. And you can see, if you take a look at your monitors now, you can see that the stormwater pond is in the corner, briefly or lightly outlined in orange. that pond is now dug. That was as a result of the 512 expansion project. That phase, the Calvert Island and Dean parcel for the stormwater pond, is completed. Now we're moving on to phase 2, which is the realignment of 102nd Terrace, which is shown there in blue or purple, I believe, and 101st Avenue, which is, Avenue, which is outlined in red. What the terms of the agreement negotiated between the Board of Trustees and the county was that we would go ahead and abandon 102nd Terrace and return it to its natural or native state. That would mean that we'd have to remove the road, the base, any utilities that might be there, fire hydrants, that sort of thing, and move them over to the 101st Avenue location further to the east. Initially, when staff took a look at this, the estimation was about $500,000 as far as the cost would be concerned. Since that time, when they started doing some field investigations, we found out there's an FP&L power line easement, and it's their own easement, so that would have to be moved from 102nd to 101st at the county expense. There is also a fiber optic cable that runs along 102nd Terrace in its own easement. Again, that would have to be moved at county expense. While the idea was to eliminate the existing stoplight that might be necessary in the future at 102nd Terrace and just have one light at the entrance to Vero Lake Estates at 101st, it now has gone up to about $820,000 in projected costs. So with that in mind, staff has put together 4 different options that the board might want to consider if the $820 price tag is a little bit too much. Option number 1 would be that we would do nothing, that we would just inform the state that we were not going to proceed with phase 2 at this time, that we might take it up at a later date, that nothing would be changed, and the intersection would stay as it is with the open median cut at 102nd Avenue. Option 2 would be to go ahead and add a second traffic signal at 102nd Terrace when it's warranted. Mr. Mora informs us that it is not now warranted and might be into the future. The signal at that time would have to be synchronized with the one at 102nd Avenue, at 101st Avenue, cost of option 2 would be approximately $250,000. Option 3 would be to go ahead and it would be to pave 102nd Terrace, pave 102nd Avenue, which is shown there in orange, down to 92nd Street, and then you would go and pave 92nd Street to 101st Avenue. You would make a new entrance into Vero Lake Estates. There would be no right-of-way necessary since we've already got the necessary right-of-way. It would just be paving and drainage improvements there. The estimated cost of option 3 would be $700,000. Option 3, we would then go ahead and close off the median opening at the current entrance to Vero Lake Estates and allow a left-in, right-out only onto 101st. Final option.
Hey, Bill, while you're on that, your thing shows 102nd Court paved. So were you talking about paving 102nd Avenue or 102nd Court?
I'm sorry, yes, it would be 102nd Avenue. I drew my the line should be moved up one street.
Okay.
I mishighlighted.
Avenue, right?
Yes, Avenue. I'm sorry. And you would still have the one that would onto 101st would be right out and left in there. The last option would be to proceed with construction of the 101st Avenue as planned, as depicted here, at a cost of the $823,000. So at this time, staff's recommendation is to select one of the options and proceed accordingly, and direct staff to proceed accordingly.
Are there any questions for staff at this time? No. Bill, or Chris, most of the 102nd Terrace traffic going to the north is going up into the industrial park. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So really, there's probably not a whole lot of traffic coming south on there that's going to go into Vero Lake Estates. Will probably be going on 512 one way or the other.
That's correct. They typically either turn right and proceed west I-95 or go back to the east and make the left turn.
Okay.
They're not having any difficulty right now using 102nd Terrace to the north and accessing 512 in either direction. So
right. So if we go with option 2, which is adding the second traffic signal when warranted, that could be years down the road.
Could be years down the road. The volumes that we're seeing now aren't even close to warranting a traffic signal. We think that staff feels that is actually the best option because it leaves the option open for a signal in the future when the traffic volumes warrant it, and then we would just coordinate those two signals at 101st, 102nd, which we've got a lot of experience in.
Right. And Bill, have you broached this with the state yet? Would they be okay leaving the status quo? It seemed like a pretty straight swap, so I don't anticipate they would have an issue with it.
No.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Davis.
So what you're saying then is that we don't. I was under the impression we had to make a decision about what direction we were going to move in. What you're saying is we just need to make a direction, just let the state know what our short-term and long-term plans are?
One of the requirements in the exchange agreement is that we would have to dedicate funds to show that we have adequate money available to restore 102nd Terrace to its natural or native state. Once that has been established by the state, or once that has been shown to the state, we would be able to go forward with the property exchange. If you do not choose to dedicate those funds to construct 101st and redo 102nd to its natural state, that's something that the trustees are looking for, is a monetary commitment.
Yeah, and that's not in either one of these, option 1, 2, or 3, is it? Or 4? I mean, as far as just dedicating the funds to keep that in there for the placeholder to restore after it was done?
I believe that would be option 4.
Just to dedicate.
Proceed with our current agreement.
Well, they're not asking us to proceed. They're asking us to dedicate funds.
Correct.
So we can get away with option 4 with less money today.
No.
We've got to finish the job?
Yeah,
or just dedicate funds?
Option 4 is to proceed with the construction, which would require the $823,000.
Just to restore?
To construct and to restore. That's
You're missing my point then. Just to satisfy the state. To say that we're going to restore this upon us getting it completed one day. How much is that? The 106, was there a figure? Let me, I guess, back up, Commissioners. This is something I've worked on for quite a while, and of course, obviously, it wasn't an easy task going to Tallahassee and trying to get the drainage and area for 510 or 512, and then trying to make an efficient intersection there and lining up 102nd Terrace with 101st Avenue. And in doing so, just looking at this long term, today it's great. You're right. I mean, you could land a 747 down the middle of the road and not have any issues just about any time of the day. The problem with that is that the number of traffic lights, even with a synchronization system, the number of traffic lights, if you want to go as far as the intersection of 510, you can start there, but I'll just start at the middle school. And you go to the middle school, and then I eventually see one day a light there at the North County Pool. One day. It's not there now. So that's 2 right there. And then you go to the next road. If we keep this design, then we're talking about 101st Avenue, which is 3. The next one would be 102nd Terrace, which is 4. And then currently you go on over, there's going to be at least another 2, if I'm not mistaken, between 102nd Terrace and the one that is currently there at 106th?
108th.
108th. So that's 7. And then you got the one at 108th. That's 8 traffic lights before you get to 95, just leaving Sebastian River Middle School. Now, technology does allow us to synchronize these to a certain extent, but that many traffic lights in such a short period of area, I can't think of a place in the county we've got that many traffic lights. And all of it's because we're dealing with an old subdivision on a new road, which is very similar to the Wabasso area, and we've gone a long way in trying to close down some of these right-of-ways. But I just can't help but think in the long term, the right thing to do is going to be align that road to make an efficient intersection there and to make it work. Now, with that being said, I understand we don't have the cash to do it right now, nor do we really have the need today to make it work. What I'd like to see is an option 5, if we could, and do what we have to satisfy the state and say, this is our plan in the long term. Here is the money to restore.
Commissioner Wheeler, go ahead.
Yeah, just to put a different point of view on what Commissioner Davis just said, it almost appears that we're going to spend $823,644 to eliminate a traffic light.
That would be a gross oversimplification.
Well, why? I mean, isn't that what you're talking about doing, though?
No, I
remember when you did the realignment, and I can see it makes sense, but I didn't realize the cost. But basically, correct me where I'm misunderstanding, because you're talking about eliminating, you got several lights there, and you're talking about an extra light, and actually by moving the road, you want to eliminate a light at 800 and some thousand.
So
where am I wrong?
Where you're wrong is which option are you choosing? Are you choosing to do nothing forever?
No, I'm looking.
Okay. Well, then we're not at $823,000.
I'm looking at option 4.
Option 4 is $823,000, but you need to tell me which option you're prepared to do, and that's the difference about the light and the realignment and any paved roads. Option 1 is nothing, and yes, you're correct there, if that's the option that you're choosing to do. I don't think that's prudent planning for the future.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's nothing, and somewhere's down the road, but yeah, I'm just saying that, to simplify this and bring it down, we're looking to spend $823,000 total at this point to eliminate one light out of several.
I just don't see it that way.
Okay. Well,
I mean,
I'm not understanding what you just went through then, apparently.
Well, if you choose option 1, which is to eliminate the light and do absolutely nothing for the drive into 102nd Terrace, then I would agree with you that if you choose to do nothing, then yes, we are, and we choose option 4, yes, you could simplify it to that. But I don't think that you're choosing that. I think you're going to, even if you choose staff recommendation, it's something a far cry different than $823,000 to be able to do what we're talking about here, and it's not just about a light.
What was staff's recommendation again? I thought.
What one where you said staff was leaning to, Chris?
Well, staff did not make a recommendation with this site, and we have looked at all of them. We feel that in the short term we can live with 1 or 2 because we're not experiencing any traffic problems today.
And I'm sorry, and where I'm at, I think option 1, and I'll tell you why, Wes, because there is no problem there today, and your futuristic thinking could be on target, but as we mentioned earlier in this meeting, we got a lot of roads we need to work on where there are problems existing right now, and to spend money to move forward in that direction, even $100,000 or $200,000 to designate the money. I don't know how we would do that, if it'd still be available, or if it's set in a special account or whatever. But we've got a lull right now, and right now is the time to start fixing some of the east-west roads, particularly in the South County, where people can get back and forth across the county without just using Route 60. Now, we've done some with that milling. It's really helped a lot. But when you brought this forward, it looks like a good idea to align them. I like the alignment, but I don't know that I like the cost.
And let me just, I think what Commissioner Davis is asking is to keep the state happy. How much money do we have to set aside just for the mitigation of 102nd Avenue? And that would be, probably not even including tearing up the asphalt. It'd be, restoring the ground, planting some plants, that kind of thing. And is that enough of a placeholder? And then, right here on page 263, it just says, mitigation, 60,000. I mean, if that's all we have to set aside
to keep it forever,
and that keeps all of our options open, that would seem pretty reasonable. Or will the state require us to actually move ahead with the swap and construct the roads and do the work? Do we know that?
In my discussions with the state, I think they're looking for us to move forward, that they like to see the swap go ahead and be completed and construction take place, because we would be building a road on their property. At that time, after we're done with the road, the deal would go ahead and close. Then we would be back on their property, restoring 102nd to its natural condition. Just from the estimate, as far as the costs that you mentioned, Mr. Davis, it's about 60,000 in mitigation, 31,000 in removing the pavement, and about 155 in relocation of the utilities and the fiber optic. So my rough numbers come up with about 246,000.
How would it? I don't follow your logic. If the state is just asking for us to set aside the dollars for mitigation, how you to set those aside with the relocation of a fiber? I understand that that's going to be a part of the project, but I don't understand how that you call that a part of what the state is asking us to do.
The state wants to make sure that the funds are available to complete the entire restoration of 102nd. That's why they want to see the money set aside, not in an escrow account or anything, but earmarked especially for this project so that the funds are available when it comes time to restore 102nd.
I would certainly like to see, before we make a decision on this, that would take away any opportunity to make an efficient intersection that we would never allow any developer to do if they were coming in. We would force them to create an efficient intersection with four-way stops. It just wouldn't. I mean, we're trying to get ourselves to do something we wouldn't allow anybody else to do. One, I think that's not proper. Two, I think that we really haven't addressed what the county's position is here as far as exactly what the state is asking. I know they'd like for us to move forward, but are they asking us to set some dollars aside, saying this is for restoration, and then we'll move forward whenever the economy turns back around or as the need's there? I understand the need's not there now. I didn't go up to Tallahassee to work for this because the need was there now. I went up there because I saw the need for it in the future and the number of lights that we're getting right there in this small segment on an east-west thoroughfare for the north end of the county. So I'd really like to know a little bit more about specifically what the state is demanding, and if they put us in a situation where I can't get support from my fellow commissioners to move forward, I tried, but I don't think that we've explored all those options.
Bill, are we under any timeline right now to get a decision back to them, or can we take a couple weeks and bring this back with what Commissioner Davis requested?
No, I don't think there's any time rush as far as state lands are concerned now. If you would like, I could go ahead and pose the question as far as what type of timeline they would be agreeable to as far as reconstruction of 102nd and construction of 101st.
In that question, explain to them the current conditions and the economy and all that. And okay, Commissioner Davis, would you like to?
I'd like to tweak that question just a little bit. I'd like to ask the question is, what do we have to do to keep this in place? And I don't mean to. I've learned how to ask bureaucrats questions, and that makes them answer that. And they're going to say, you've got to complete it in 3 years, or they're going to say, well, our main issue is the swap, and if you put dollars aside for for restoration. And I'd like it just as simple. What is the minimum we have to do to keep this agreement in place?
Regardless of time frame.
Yes, because we do not have the need now. Since we built the road, we've solved a lot of the problems, but that's going to be a short-term solution to a long-term problem. It's not going to be enough forever, and so I just don't want us to lose the work that we've got here. Let me know what it's going to cost for the minimum amount to be able to keep this the way it is, and whatever their demands are, and then I think that would be appropriate for us to make a decision upon that time.
Okay, and that's a motion?
It is.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Fletcher. Basically, the motion is just to ask DEP what we can do to keep our options open and get a definitive answer from them, and then we'll bring it back and make a final decision. Yes. Anything, Commissioner Wheeler, anything? Okay. Any comment from the public? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay.
Next is 13B. Reconsideration of acquisition of right-of-way along 66th Avenue, Fanac Family Limited Partnership, 66th Avenue and 41st Street. And Bill, you're going to do this one also?
Yes, sir. Commissioners, back on April 14, 2009, the board considered purchase of the 3.838 acres of right-of-way needed from 41st up to 45th Street on 66th Avenue. This parcel is a 37-acre parcel lying on the west side of 66th, owned by the Benak Family Trust. It's currently improved as a palm nursery where it's growing Washingtonia palms and also queen palms. The first time that the board saw this, there was some concern generated about what would we do with the palms after we purchased the property. The original agreement called for the Benaks to use their best efforts in selling the palms, and that at the end of the period when it comes time for the county to build its road, we would have the palms reappraised, and we would then enter into a contract at a later date for the purchase of the palms at the time of construction. What we did is we went back and renegotiated certain parts and added some final points, some definiteness to the issue of the palms, which is before you now. If I could break down the property, again, we need the 3.83 acres, as you can see on your screen outlined there in the yellow. It will take approximately 5 rows of palm trees. That would mean that there would be 565 palm trees affected. It breaks down into 322 queen palms, 243 Washingtonia. Currently, the Benaks are selling the Washingtonias at a price of $12 per foot and the queen palms at $6 per foot. The trees are dug, brought to your vehicle on their site at this location, loaded, and then the purchaser goes ahead and plants them at this time. They're offering the same sort of agreement to us, and at today's date, as of today, the estimated value of the 5 rows of trees, 565 palms, would be $55,722. The purchase price for the 3.838 acres of property would be at the Cherry Lane cattle price, which the board approved back in February of 2009 at $55,600 per acre, meaning a total of $213,392.80 an acre. There's some price relocation in there, or some fence removal and relocation, loss of irrigation and modification of the irrigation. Total purchase for the land and trees would be $277,000. Then when you add the 7.5% of the purchase price for the attorney's fees and engineering fees, we come to a grand total of $295,450,000.32. As far as the remaining palms, the Benaks have agreed to just go ahead and treat the palms, fertilize, mow, weed, whatever they would normally do in the course of the other rows of palm trees that we have. And as the county comes in and utilizes the palms that are there, moves them to another location, or plants them at schools, whatever locations there might be, we would work off of that annual figure of $6,701.95 for the yearly maintenance charge. So as far as the recommendation today, staff is asking that the board go ahead and approve the recommendation as laid out, instruct staff to come back with a more definite contractual agreement, not only for the purchase of the properties, but also for the purchase and maintenance of the palm trees. If you have any questions, I believe Mr. Rusty Benak is here and available to answer them for you.
Commissioners, any questions?
No.
Commissioner Wheeler?
I just have one question. Rusty, on the trees, whenever somebody buys them from you, typically there's a warranty with those. Is that warranted by the installer as far as maybe 1 year, or do you as the grower warranty them at all, or is that all just with the installer?
You know, that's kind of a gray area. It's usually who's at fault.
Yeah.
You know,
if I load that on a truck and the guy doesn't tarp it, and he goes down the road and it gets all wind burned, and then he comes back and said, well, you sold me a bad tree, well, then that's my issue with the truck driver. Palm trees are pretty hardy, and you rarely have problems. They don't shock as bad as like oak trees and other trees, so we rarely have problems with our palms.
Okay. Commissioner Fletcher, do you have anything? No. So Bill, basically under this proposal, we're flat out buying all the trees in a lump sum.
Correct.
And that there's no effort by the BNACs to sell down those trees before we finally close.
Correct. We're buying them. It's our responsibility or obligation to do something with them, because we'd have to pay for them either which way.
Do we have a plan what we're going to do with 565 palm trees?
There has been some talk about planting them around the golf course, and I think Mr. Mora has some other places as well.
Right. We can use them on the golf course. We can use them in parks. Washingtonias and Queens are not ideal for median vegetation, but we will make our best effort to use them around the county-owned lands.
Okay. And Rusty, if we were a private landscaper and came in with a 500 tree order, would there be any quantity discount off your price list?
Well, that's a good question, and I'd probably say there would be some discount, yes. As you can see, I provided some invoices, and those customers on those invoices are customers that have been with me for years, most of them. And, there's a lot of palm trees out there, some palm trees that are cheaper, but the quality is poor, and especially with this environment right now, a lot of people aren't taking care of their material, so the landscapers are going to people that they know are growing quality palms. But we've never been big discounters. I mean, there could be something, but we're usually not discounting our palms. You can see across the board it's pretty flat.
Gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just wanted to ask Joe if he had any other additional consideration for the trees. It's a large amount of trees, and I realized that Mr. Moore pointed out that they weren't that suitable for a median or optimum for the median, but that's what the state uses, is it not, at the exit ways and rampways?
Not usually Washingtonias or Queens. The reason they don't is they are a little bit require a little more vigorous maintenance than some of the other palms. I can't think of a location where the state has used these, but that doesn't mean they can't be used. They can be used, but it's just a little bit more maintenance on them.
But you do foresee us being able to use a sizable amount of these trees?
Yes.
Joe?
I mean, we'll attempt to use the trees. We'll have to look around right now. We have to relocate them and everything else. So you got to take that into consideration. But we will where we can. Right now, I don't have anywhere specific for them.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Davis.
Approve staff recommendation. Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Davis and second by Commissioner Fletcher to approve staff recommendation. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that should do it. Unless there's any further comments from the public, we will consider this meeting adjourned. Thank you.